time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a Tuesday matinee edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Divular, of course.
Hello.
Hello, everybody.
So, dark. Hang on.
Yeah, it's a little dark. Not too bad. So, folks, I know we said we may be on at 7, maybe on at 2 today. It's going to be 2 o'clock, obviously. I'm feeling significantly better, but the wife is feeling actually quite a bit worse, and so I couldn't leave her here all day with the kiddos and then come back and do an evening show. That would not be fair. So we kept the time at 2 p.m. For the afternoon show. Really sucks that I couldn't make that rally. So there's a rally called Communities Not Cages going on at the New York State Capitol building today, a big anti-incarceration rally. I'm going to try to find some footage of that, some reporting of that, so we could at least feature it on the show on Thursday, because I really did want to go, but it just unfortunately was not to be. But the good news is, the silver lining is we're here with you at our regularly scheduled time with a fun-filled afternoon. It was quite the fun-filled show on Sunday, pretty epic one, 4 hours, and we didn't even get to everything we had planned for that day. The news comes at you fast. You know what the libs said the first time Trump was elected? It's so exhausting. It's so exhausting. It's so exhausting. Well, in a way, they're right. I mean, they're not content creators, so they don't really have an excuse. But for content creators, it is kind of exhausting. Like for a content creator, when Trump is president, it's kind of exhausting. Like when we were doing, like we started the show when Trump was president, but it was during the election, so we weren't really talking much about his presidency. And by the time we got into like this format of like live stream news commentary, he was not president. It shows you how little Biden did. Like you really appreciate what a useless fuck Joe Biden was in these first 2 weeks. Like Trump has probably done more in the first 2 weeks than Biden did in 4 years. That's like noticeable. Like just as a point of reference, I found this article being like, here's all the things Biden accomplished that you might not have known about. And it's like, all right, well, let's see. Were we just like sleeping on Joe Biden the whole time? Was there actually news out of his administration that we just weren't covering? It's like, he made green investment easier.
Waxes in El
Salvador. He made green investment easier for certain farmers in Iowa and Nebraska. Like that kind of shit. Like it was nothing as newsworthy as this.
No, well, that is also because, yes, Biden was a creature of the status quo, as would have been, Mitt Romney or any conventional Republican candidate. This is really an attempt to not only rework policy, but to completely rework the government. And you could argue with, as we'll get into in the USAID piece, with what they have going on with Elon at the Treasury, it is a challenge to the basic idea of constitutional government and checks and balances. Make no mistake, that is exactly what's happening here. It is a consolidation of power in the executive that is in all likelihood unconstitutional. Now, I understand that people feel so frustrated that, and we'll see this again in the USAID segment. Ilhan Omar said at one point, would you rather have an executive consolidating this power, have your elected officials of Congress make these decisions? And I think at this point, most Americans would not say elected officials of Congress, because for one thing, they wouldn't do it. It's not as if they would do it. And at that point, this is the elephant in the room that I think people who are supporting these actions are not acknowledging, and that we need to bring it out in the open and address it directly. You're saying that you no longer believe in representative government. If you support this way of approaching it, which I think you have reason to feel that way, that, hey, they're not going to do any of these things. Okay, but own that. Own what you're saying. You no longer believe in a democratic system. You don't believe the system can be fixed through democratic means, so you're okay with dictatorial means.
Yeah.
It's a point of view, right? I mean, defend it.
I think that's more or less right. I'll have more to say on that, but I'm saving it for the segment. I'm saving it for the big time. Saving it for when it counts. All right. Well,
you don't want to blow your nut early.
Right. No, don't want to peak too early, as they say. Don't want to peak too early. Hey, we got a nice crowd in here. 812 strong in the YouTube chat. 691 strong over on Rumble. Smash that like button. Smash that follow button on Rumble. Smash that subscribe button over here on YouTube. Please and thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for being here. This afternoon, we're going to get started. Folks, we like to start the shows off with lighter topics and easier topics. So we're going to start off nice and easy, something not too controversial, which is South African race relations.
Yeah.
So, South African president signs controversial land seizure law. This was 11 days ago today, January 24th. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has signed into law a bill allowing land seizures by the state without compensation, a move that has put him at odds with some members of his government. Black people only own a small fraction of farmland nationwide more than 30 years after the end of the racist system of apartheid. The majority remains with the white minority. Just to flesh out those numbers a bit, in another article it cites white people are 7% of the South African population, and they own 70% of the farmland. So that is quite the disparity that still exists, despite the fact that
that's the downside to peaceful revolution.
Yes, right, exactly. Yeah, we'll put it that way. Exactly. Right, 7% of the population.
They did it the other way. I promise you, it would not be like that.
Still own 70% of the farmland. This has led to frustration and anger over the slow pace of reform. The law outlines how expropriation can be done and on what basis by the state, the government says. It replaces the Pre-Democratic Expropriation Act of 1975, which placed an obligation on the state to pay owners it wanted to take land from under the principle of willing seller, willing buyer. The new law allows for expropriation without compensation only in circumstances where it is, quote, just and equitable and in the public interest to do so. This includes if the property is not being used and there's no intention to either develop or make money from it, or when it poses a risk to people. The president's spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, said that under the law, the state may not expropriate property arbitrarily or for a purpose other than in the public interest. Expropriation may not be exercised unless the expropriating authority has, without success, attempted to reach an agreement with the owner, he added. So that means they have to approach the owner in good faith and try and make a deal. Now, is there some risk of arbitrary enforcement? Yeah, there always is. There's that risk with any government. But it does say, apparently, in writing here, you're not allowed to just come and take something with no moment's notice, as if you were, I don't know, let's say Israel, right? Like, it's not a West Bank type situation, right? So I'm sure, given that, I'm sure, our government will be just fine with this, since they're fine with Israel taking land with no justification, no notice, no negotiation, no nothing. Here it says that they are open to, in fact, they have to approach the landowner in good faith and try and work something out without simply taking it. The signing of the law comes after a 5-year consultative process, as well as the findings of a presidential panel set up to look into the issue. The pro-business Democratic Alliance, the second largest party in the Government of National Unity, the GNU, says it strongly opposes the law and was consulting with its lawyers. It says that while it supports legislation addressing land restitution, it takes issue with the process followed by the country's parliament to enact this law. The Freedom Front Plus, not to be confused with the Tesla Frequent Drivers program of the same name. The Freedom Front Plus, a party which defends the rights of the white minority and is also in the GNU, vows to challenge the constitutionality of the law and do everything in its power to have it amended if it is found to be unconstitutional. One of the sticking points for the party was the law's possible threat to private ownership. So let's hear what Donald Trump has to say about this, if anything. I mean, you think he could just stay out of this, but no. President Donald Trump has announced plans to cut off all future funding to South Africa until the country investigates his claims that certain classes of people are being treated very badly. He did not specify further or provide any evidence to support these assertions. Here he is.
Truth Social, you said that you were going to cut aid from South Africa. Will you plan to cut aid across other African nations, and why South Africa?
No, it's only South Africa. Terrible things are happening in South Africa. The leadership is doing some terrible things, horrible things. So that's under investigation right now. We'll make a determination. And until such time as we find out what South Africa is doing, they're taking away land, they're confiscating land, and actually they're doing things that are perhaps far worse than that.
They're taking away land. Don't you know it's bad to take away land by force, according to Donald Trump. He also truthed out. South Africa is confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly. The white class. It is a bad situation that the radical left media doesn't want to so much as mention. A massive human rights violation, at a minimum, is happening for all to see. The United States won't stand for it. We will act. Also, I will be cutting off all future funding to South Africa until a full investigation of this situation has been completed. I know I say America first, but goddamn it, an injustice to white people somewhere is an injustice to white people everywhere. As the great Martin Luther King said, to borrow a phrase from the great Martin Luther King. Yes, what is it? An injustice to white people somewhere is a threat to white people everywhere. Right?
Yeah, that's quoted right on the mall.
Yeah, right. yeah, exactly. Right. So suppressed news quote tweets this. Honestly, if you replace South Africa with Israel, then Donald Trump's statement would make perfect sense. Yeah, let's give that a try. Israel is confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly. There you go. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Sense. I'll be cutting off all future funding to Israel until a full investigation of this situation has been completed. There you go. So you were close. You just had the wrong country.
Yep.
The Hampton Institute tweets out South Africa is being targeted by Trump for 3 reasons. 1, it is actively decolonizing by expropriating stolen land / wealth from its former white ruling class. Musk is a part of. More of that in a minute. 2, to punish them for holding Israel accountable for genocide. That's right. South Africa did bring the genocide case against Israel. And 3, to strike against BRICS. That's the Hampton Institute's theory. Nico House says Trump is threatening to sanction South Africa for taking back the land stolen from them by the former white apartheid state, as he's threatening to send troops to Greenland to, check notes, take their land for U.S. interests. Yes, exactly. Well said. Well said. But you could take it from some white South Africans themselves here. So Kim Heller is one of them. White South Africans are not victims. We are beneficiaries of a cruel racist system called apartheid, and we continue to benefit from this today in free South Africa. AfriForum, which we'll get to in a second, is a right-wing organization, and Donald Trump must speak to black leaders in South Africa, not a rabid racist minority. So AfriForum is a white South African advocacy group. This is from 2013, so they've been on the page of white genocide in South Africa pretty much, so since apartheid was overturned, it seems. I don't know when they date back to exactly, but yes, this is the nature of the organization. We have some more on them here from this white South African named Dan Corder. Now, if that doesn't look like a white, I mean, he really looks the part of a white South African. Yeah. There he is. So here he is giving his take, a little more explanation here.
If Pixar put out a movie called Apartheid, he'd be the white guy.
He'd be in the trailer. Exactly.
Why Donald Trump is now lashing out. One of the reasons why Donald Trump is now lashing out at South Africa over untrue claims of land grabs is because of AfriForum, a lobby group that has been working tirelessly for years to try and convince world leaders that there are land grabs in South Africa and white people are under threat and under attack. AfriForum has also twisted reality to try and make it look like there is an above average rate of farm murders in South Africa, which has been exhaustively, thoroughly, repeatedly debunked by researchers and journalists from around the world at this point. But that didn't stop them from getting on Tucker Carlson's show on Fox News back in 2018 when it was like the most watched political show in America and spewing this nonsense. Soon after that, Tucker did a piece on land grabs and expropriation in South Africa. And soon after that, Donald Trump tweeted about the awful things going on in South Africa for the first time. And all of that and years more of AfriForum campaigning has led to this moment. There have been no land grabs in South Africa since 1994. Because before 1994, land grabs and unjust expropriation was kind of apartheid's whole thing. And before that, the English South African-led government's whole thing. See the 1913 Land Act. And before that, colonialism's whole thing. But this little thing called reality has not stopped AfriForum from spreading their nonsense. And they were thrilled yesterday morning when Trump lashed out at South Africa and threatened cuts. Until they realized that Trump could cut back on things that really mattered to AfriForum supporters, white farmers, like the AGOA deal that helps our agriculture sector so much. And by yesterday evening, a lobby group from South Africa was calling for a foreign government to sanction our democratically elected leaders based on lies, nonsense, evils that they accuse our government of doing that our government has not been doing. That's where we are.
Okay, so admittedly, I'm not an expert on this, but that seems to be a fairly reasonable breakdown of things consistent with the reporting that we just cited out of the BBC. Don't forget, we have eminent domain laws here where the government can, if push comes to shove, just take your land if they claim they have good reason to do so.
There's actually, if you know where to look in Central Park, there are the outlines from the foundations of houses that was an African-American neighborhood that actually took Central Park all the way to the Supreme Court to try to stop them from taking that land for the park.
That's right. That's right. So what Dan Corder just said there is that even the AfriForum people are a little hesitant that this funding, which is mostly healthcare funding, is going to disproportionately or negatively impact the South African people and then turn people against them. So here he is here. This is Ernst von Zyl, an AfriForum representative, saying we just want politicians punished, not the people.
Asking Donald Trump to target ANC leaders. What does that mean for our country?
The ANC is obviously, that's Cyril Ramaphosa's party.
Because this is the leaders of our country you're talking about.
Yes, it means when you push through destructive policies that are going to harm South Africa and regular South Africans, you should face consequences for it. We want the international role players to target with sanctions South African politicians that push through evil and destructive policies, not to punish the citizens of this country. And that has always been AfriForum's stance. As I said, we have the receipts to prove it. You can go through all of our stances on this issue over the years. It's always been punish the politicians that are seeking to push through policy for their own personal agenda and their party's own agenda rather than for the good of the country, and that will bring about the change that's necessary in South Africa.
That's right. He's for the people. As a white African.
All right. I gotta say, man, this is where you say I'm a child of the Cold War. You're a child of post 9/11. Okay, so for me, my lens, I'm like, how are these motherfuckers still a thing?
Right.
How
Yeah.
are they still a thing? This is bringing me back to de Klerk. Really? These people have that kind of power and that kind of say in that country? Still?
Well, yes, and apparently so, and that explains why this quote unquote land grab law apparently had to be signed and had to be pursued because yes, all these years later, 7% of the South African white population still owns 70+% of the farmland.
I can't believe that.
So,
You know, we always, because in America, especially with Nelson Mandela, who was essentially canonized, right? We definitely had the perception that this was a rare and heartwarming story of people with historical differences resolving it fairly, where the black population took back their country and the whites who chose to remain became kind of, a subordinate minority. They never talked about this, that they were still going to own most of the land in the country. That's why I'm a little shocked that that was the resolution when apartheid fell, that they left all the land to the white people. I'm amazed.
Well, Mandela remained on terrorist watch list until 2008. So, you know what I mean? So, you're right. I mean, even when I was in school, even elementary through junior high school, which was before 2008, obviously, way before, Mandela was taught in a positive light. But just like Martin Luther King, we like to learn in school about what great people these are. Meanwhile, we know that the government treats them as enemies, right? And so, South Africa, look, the legacy of apartheid seems to be alive and well, economically speaking, at least, which is why measures like this are being taken. Here's another white South African, Warren Robertson. As a white South African, I denounce Afroforum and their lies. There is no genocide of white people here. They are dangerous grifters intent on lining their pockets at the expense of their fellow South Africans. Let's try the leaders for treason, he says. All right, so Cyril Ramaphosa responds to Trump. South Africa is a constitutional democracy that is deeply rooted in the rule of law, justice, and equality. The South African government has not confiscated any lands. The recently adopted expropriation Act... They should. They're working on it. But even under this law, they're saying they got to make you a deal first, and they have to articulate a clear reason. They can't just show up and kick you out the way the Zionists do. The recently adopted Expropriation Act is not a confiscation instrument, but a constitutionally mandated legal process that ensures public access to land in an equitable and just manner as guided by the Constitution. South Africa, like the United States of America and other countries, has always had expropriation laws that balance the need for public usage of land and the protection of rights of property owners. We look forward to engaging with the Trump administration over our land reform policy and issues of bilateral interest. We are certain that out of those engagements, we will share a better and common understanding over these matters. The U.S. remains a key strategic, political, and trade partner for South Africa, with the exception of PEPFAR aid, which constitutes 17% of South Africa's HIV/AIDS program. There is no other funding that is received by South Africa from the United States. So Elon, quote tweets him, "Why do you have openly racist ownership laws?" Which, of course, they do not have openly racist ownership
Elon,
laws.
the white South African son of a, what was it, a diamond mine or
was it an emerald mine? I think it was
an emerald mine.
Yeah. But this opened up a conversation, apparently. Apparently, Cyril Ramaphosa thought it was a good idea to give Elon a call after that exchange that they had. South Africa's president calls Musk to calm Trump land row. Yeah, I'm sure that went great. South Africa's president, Cyril Ramaphosa, has moved to diffuse a row with the new U.S. administration over a new land law by speaking to Elon Musk. Mr. Musk is a close advisor to U.S. President Donald Trump, who on Sunday threatened to cut all future funding to South Africa over allegations that it was confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly, as we heard earlier. The South Africa-born tech billionaire joined in the criticism, asking on X why Ramaphosa had openly racist ownership laws. Ramaphosa's office said in the call to Mr. Musk, the president reiterated South Africa's constitutionally embedded values of the respect for the rule of law, justice, fairness, and equality. So let's just go back to this tweet here because the conversation didn't quite end there. There was a reply here that caught Elon's eye from Jonathan Pallison. White South Africans are being persecuted for their race in their home country. Also, white South Africans are one of the few population groups that are fiscally positive when immigrating to Europe. We should allow more immigration of white South Africans, to which Elon replies, yes. So that gives you a good example of how that call went, I have a feeling. We don't really have new reporting on that as of now. So as of now, the plans seem to remain the same, although it does seem as though Ramaphosa at this moment has not backed down, And he mentions, he's quoted in that tweet, where is it? With the exception of PEPFAR aid, which constitutes 17% of the HIV/AIDS program, there's no other funding received by South Africa from the U.S. So maybe that is a signal that, hey, if this is a deal breaker, we'll just find another way to make up that 17%. We are not going to back down on this, which, of course, they shouldn't. Of course, they shouldn't. But, yeah, I mean, it just shows you the wind at their backs. That MAGA feels. The fact that, you go on there, you do your little autistic salute, quote unquote. You're out
this
here.
is also no. I mean, his autism also causes him to endorse extremely racist tweets. Everybody knows that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
It's a common symptom of autism.
This is what I mean. Like you're out there saluting on the stage. You're backing the AfD in Germany. And now you're vouching for white South African immigrants, saying there aren't enough white South Africans in South Africa. They need to let more of them in. It's just quite brazen. This is what happens, I guess, when you win a mandate. You have the wind at your back, and there's that leaked audio that we didn't get to today. Maybe we'll get to on Thursday, because RFK just cleared the first hurdle to becoming HHS secretary. He made it out of committee, which is a good sign for him. At this point, I think it's overwhelmingly likely he'll get through. But there's a old audio of him saying, there aren't a lot of Nazis out there, but there are a lot of bootlickers and cowards. Well, that's true. Right? Like, you don't all have to be Nazis, but you just need a core group of just die-in-the-wool bigots, and then you need a bunch of bootlickers and cowards who figure out it's easier to go along than to resist, so what the hell. And now you see the former group represented in Elon Musk, who just with absolute full confidence goes out, does his little salute on the stage, backs a right-wing fascist German party, and now yes, absolutely, yes, white South Africans are being persecuted. We need to increase their numbers. The white South Africans, one of history's greatest victims, according to Elon Musk.
Yeah, this is just amazing, and it is a very good example of when people tell you who they are, believe them. This is why my patience for people who want to join up with these people because they went after people that you didn't like or that you have a cultural grievance with. My patience for that from anyone who considers themselves on the left, even nominally, is very minimal. Because these people tell you again and again and again who they are. Okay, so they're going to take over the payment system. These are people who feel that the white South Africans are being oppressed.
Right.
So what do you think they're going to do with that power? Why would you celebrate that? The enemy of your enemy is not always your friend. They could very easily replace what you hated with something far worse than the original thing. Now that you can balance both of those ideas at the same time. It's not you don't have to decide, well, I'm on the side of this rainbow fascist coalition or I'm on the side of the more traditional jackbooted variety. You can blaze your own path there, man. You don't actually have to side with people like this. And in terms of the argument that he's making, white South Africans in their native land Are you fucking
right.
shitting me?
Well, yeah.
Are you fucking shitting me? The black people in that land are the natives to that land. And if you feel that because they've been there for so long, the whites, that they're now native to that land, well, you should shut the fuck up about Israel then, right?
Exactly.
You should
Yeah.
shut the fuck up, because isn't that their whole argument? That they have this tenuous connection,
Right.
which, by the way, the DNA shows is not true of most of the people claiming to be descended from that land as Jews. But okay, they say they were, they lived there 2,000 years ago. And you accept the formulation that they have a right to that land on that basis. Well, how much more so the vast majority of the population that is African, that is native to that land? These people should be happy that they're not getting thrown off that land. I'm amazed that they weren't, to be honest with you. That's the most
they should have been.
I did not know they had 70% of the land still among the white people. I guess I never really thought about it. I never really thought about it. It certainly wasn't discussed when they presented, look, Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I mean, it was inspirational to humanity, honestly, that the way that apartheid ended, and there weren't pogroms and bloody orgies of revenge, which I think most people felt would have been justified, to be honest with you. The fact that it ended in such a humanitarian, decent way, it was such a hopeful vision of what people could do. I did not know that these kinds of iniquities remained very much ingrained in their society. And now you motherfuckers are going to come complain about it?
When they do an expropriation bill that is not too dissimilar from our eminent domain laws.
But we have eminent domain.
We have eminent domain. Right. Exactly.
How do you think they build the wall? How do you
Right.
think they build the wall? They got to use a lot of eminent domain. What do you think, that land's all empty that they want to build the wall in?
Well, look, it's a pattern. I mean, when you look at these BRICS countries, when you look at Russia, when you look at China, when you look at South Africa, they show unbelievable restraint in the face of just the cruelest and most abject of Western fuckery. Like the fact that it took 30 years to get a bill that's this benign, through the government. Like, come on, you'd think this would be the starting point.
I saw. I forget.
So it's a pattern. It's a pattern, but not restrained enough. This is a pattern. The West will just take and take and take and take and take. This is a pattern when it comes to, obviously, Israel-Palestine, UNRWA, which we're going to get to later. And Donald Trump feels a need to weigh in on this and flex, right? Well, we're going to cut off funding to South Africa until this is changed. If what he's saying is true there, which is it's just some healthcare funding and there's not that much funding, then what that means is Donald Trump is doing this as a political flex and as a signal to his base that America's back and we're not going to stand for any white people being bought off of their land anywhere in the world.
I forget what his name is off the top of my head. He's this really interesting Muslim commentator. I would love to get him on the show, actually. And I saw him talk about how they argue that the West can't give up its power over the rest of the world because of what the rest of the world will do to them. And one of the arguments he makes is, yeah, you think like that because that's what you would do. You can't imagine that people are more civilized than you, that there are people in the world. And you know what? The South Africans proved it. They are. Can you imagine what Europeans would have done in the reverse position if they had overthrown this oppressive apartheid system? They would have killed everybody.
It would have been a bloodbath. Yeah, exactly. All right. Star Fury, thanks for the $5. President Trump getting rid of the Department of Education is like Maj Kong riding the nuke at the end of Major Kong riding the nuke at the end of Dr. Strangelove. Yeehaw. Thank you, Star Fury. Appreciate that. Kuznetsky Bassane, thanks for the $9.99 super sticker. Appreciate that. Ryan, thanks for the €10. Obama dismantled Joint Forces Command with executive order because Bush established it with executive order. So I'm pretty sure Trump can dismantle USAID as it, too, was established by executive order. Justin Oberg, thanks for the $9.99. Pardon me. Tech oligarchs back Trump as a chaos agent to kill democracy, install an AI monarch, and create a decentralized corporate fiefdom. They rule like Venetian doges. Efficiency replaces freedom. Yes, good one. Thank you. Barbara Howard says row is pronounced row. See, maybe it's just my speaking, but I don't even know. R-A-W. How would you say R-A-W? Row? Row? He says row is pronounced row in that context, unless
Row?
I'm just not speaking it right. Yeah, I always thought I always kind of saying them the same way. Row, row, I guess. All right. Well, I'll look that up. Thank you. All right. Why don't we go on to segment number 2? This is a big one.
This is a big segment. USAID. All right. So Trump was asked. He gave a kind of like impromptu press conference out on the tarmac. And this is what he said about USAID.
What's going on there?
Well, it's been run by a bunch of radical lunatics, and we're getting them out. USAID, run by radical lunatics, and we're getting them out, and then we'll make a decision.
All right. So Trump's getting the radicals out of USAID. So it's being merged into the State Department, 3 U.S. officials said to CBS off the record. USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, will be merged into the State Department with significant cuts in the workforce, but it will remain a humanitarian aid entity, 3 U.S. officials told CBS News. Officials in President Trump's administration are expected to announce the moves in the coming days. Discussions about the extent of the funding reductions remained fluid on Monday. Mr. Trump made Secretary of State Marco Rubio the acting administrator of USAID, sources said, and Rubio himself soon confirmed it to reporters traveling with him in El Salvador. ABC News earlier reported his status as chief. Rubio said in a letter to congressional leaders that he has authorized Peter Morocco, Director of Foreign Assistance at State, to perform the duties of Deputy Administrator of USAID and to begin a, quote, review and potential reorganization of USAID's activities to maximize efficiency and align operations. USAID oversees humanitarian development and security programs in about 120 countries around the world. Yes, we will get into that. According to the nonpartisan Congressional Research Service, USAID, quote, provides assistance to strategically important countries and countries in conflict, leads U.S. efforts to alleviate poverty, disease, and humanitarian need, and assists U.S. commercial interests by supporting developing countries' economic growth. Foreign aid overall, of which USAID is one part, accounts for less than 1% of the federal budget. So yes, you can clearly see what kind of a line CBS News is pushing. I felt it's important to include that by contrast to the reality, which we'll get to. Rubio told reporters that U.S. tax dollars need to further U.S. national interest. The move to merge USAID with the State Department and reduce its funding may raise legal questions, however. USAID was established in 1961 by an act of Congress, so the president would require congressional approval to shut it down. USAID, like most of the rest of the federal government, has been operating under a temporary funding measure that expires in March. Mr. Trump said Sunday that the agency was run by a bunch of radical lunatics. We're getting them out. USAID headquarters was closed on Monday because of a security incident, sources said. But the incident stemmed from efforts over the weekend by personnel from the Elon Musk-run Department of Government Efficiency, known as DOGE, to access USAID systems. Sources told CBS News it was related to the USAID Chief of Staff, Matt Hobson, a recent Trump appointee, who attempted to block DOGE officials from getting access to USAID systems. 2 top security officials were fired Monday for attempting to block access to DOGE, according to multiple sources. Hobson resigned Sunday. Musk, the Trump administration's billionaire advisor, had said he'd spoken in detail about USAID with Mr. Trump. Quote, he agrees we should shut it down, Musk said in a late-night live session on his social media platform X. Not all of Mr. Trump's top advisors agreed with the idea of shutting down the agency completely, several sources said. So now, naturally, the Democrats have been speaking out against this. Now, here's Ilhan Omar. She was among many speakers outside USAID offices speaking out against this action.
Do you want the executive making the only decisions in this country, or do you want the elected representatives that you sent to Washington making those policies?
Okay, so this is the problem right here. The government has failed the American people so badly that that is not a gimme that she thinks it is. That is not the mic drop she thinks it is. Yeah, even the applause in the crowd is kind of weak. They're kind of like, yeah, right? Most people no longer trust Congress. They no longer trust their elected officials. And when people lose faith in democracy, when they don't believe that democracy can deliver for them, well, when they see somebody through what are clearly not constitutional means, authoritarian means, achieving an end that they know, let's face it, would Congress have ever shut down USAID? Ever? They cheer it on. But as we'll see, it's more complicated than that. They're not shutting it down. They're bringing it further under their control. They're centralizing it. I think the way a lot of people are taking this is very naive. But right there, when you see how that lands, this is how we got here. No, Congress would not have done. You're defending this agency, and you're completely ignoring the very well-known, well-documented, and well-reported instances of it functioning as a front for destabilizing the nations that it operates in. You had something, Keaton?
Well, yeah. First of all, an injustice to a bureaucracy somewhere is an injustice to bureaucracies everywhere. No, but it is funny how this was stuff like this, incidents like this, is what makes us view, at least makes me view the Bernie movement in 2016 as the canary in the coal mine. And that was a movement out of which she kind of grew. Like, I wasn't familiar with her at the time, but she was elected to Congress in, what was it, 2018? I think, so she was one of the founding squad members, right? And the whole sort of, thesis put forward by that movement was that institutional rot coincides with, or goes side by side with, a decaying quality of life for working people. When these democratic institutions fail people view them not as sacred pillars of our civilization, but as bargaining chips to trade in for something better and easier. And that's what's happening now. Now you have a majority of the population willing to just trade in any semblance of representative democracy and like collective deliberation. They're trading that in for a strongman, which was entirely predictable. Not only was it predictable, but like people like Ilhan Omar, like the Bernie 2016 movement, we were the people screaming that the loudest at that time, that this was inevitable if the Democrats at the time did not change course, and we know how that went.
Right. And Ilhan Omar has completely given away her credibility by putting herself in a position where she's defending an organization that I'm sure she knows is a CIA front. I'm sure she knows that better than most, not being from America. All right, so let's see the rest of what she had to say.
I am exceptionally upset about USAID. I lived in a refugee camp for 4 years as a child surviving civil war. It is the essential programs that USAID provided that kept my family and I fed and safe. It is the resources that so many people around the world rely on. And it is our soft power. Oftentimes, people interact with our country through the military. That does not create love for us, and it certainly does not keep us safe. When the world...
All right. So Greenwald had Mike Benz on, who we'll be hearing a little bit of his interview with Joe Rogan, and he asked him about this. He said, well, what about people who say these water programs, these food programs, these HIV prevention programs are going to get shut down? And he made the point, and I think based on the reporting, this is probably true, that anytime they're doing that, there's a motive behind it. They're doing something behind that program. They're using that program as a shield. So I don't doubt that what she's saying is true, but I'm sure there's more to whatever organization she was interacting with in Somalia was actually doing there.
Well, also, if I could
and
just
again,
one
I'm
very
sure
quick-
she knows that.
Yeah, if I could just interject one quick thing. I know it's a long segment. I don't even mean to fuck you up, but when she says, you know, at the end there, you know, it is just, this also speaks to the hypocrisy and the failure of the squad and people like Ilhan Omar. It takes a lot of balls after voting for Ukraine package after Ukraine package after Ukraine package to use the phrase soft power.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So, you know, she wasn't the only one there. She was part of one of those patented Democratic Party cringe fests. So here's a little more of that before they had their own January 6th there. Stormed the building.
Probably saw Elon Musk and his crew put a gag order on AID employees. They disconnected them from email, which is putting lives at risk around the world. So we are here to enter the building, and so we can hear firsthand from whoever is here at AID, or at least witness firsthand what is happening with this Elon Musk attempted takeover, which will not stand. We will prevail. Let's go.
I don't know. Where are the Capitol Police?
Yeah, where's the
looks
National
like
Guard?
a riot to me.
Here they
Look
come.
at them. Look at them. They're storming the building. Nobody stopped them. I think that guy's got a glass of kombucha there. That can be dangerous.
I mean, if they get locked up, the only hope of getting them out would be to elect Amy Goodman president, and she can pardon them.
Okay, so that's what a Democratic Party riot looks like. No wonder they lost. All right, so in a more serious vein, the Democrats finally figured out a process response. Democratic Senator Brian Schatz put us a hold on Trump's State Department nominees. He gave a little press conference about this.
If you want to change an agency, introduce a bill and pass a law. You cannot wave away an agency that you don't like or that you disagree with by executive order or by literally storming into the building and taking over the servers. That is not how the American system of government works. That's number one. Number two is, it is true that there will be suffering all over the world. There already is suffering all over the world as a result of this. But it's not just that. It's that instability from starvation and disease will visit us in the United States of America. There is a reason that USAID is an arm of American foreign policy, and it is because we understand that a stable world means a stable America. And in the
Okay. All right. So once again, the Democrats are going to pretend that, this is UNICEF, that this organization is just feeding starving children around the world. It's not being used as an instrument to destabilize nations. It's not being used as an instrument of real politics to counter our perceived geopolitical enemies. All they're doing is feeding needy children and giving people condoms, which, as we will see, is total bullshit. At the same time, what he's saying is not wrong. The actions that Trump is taking right now are just a complete end run around the Constitution and the checks and balances of our government. Now, yes, the system's not working anymore. It's been so completely taken over by oligarchs, by money, that no matter who wins an election, the people have very little say in the government. What the Trump administration is doing is just getting rid of the illusion of democracy entirely and saying, we're just going to run things. We're just going to centralize everything in the executive. You guys sue. Good luck with that. By the time you're done, we'll have gone through the government systems. We'll have fired people. We'll have shut down agencies or made it impossible for them to function, and let that wind through the courts for several years. Courts that, by the way, I've stacked with my appointees, particularly the Supreme Court. So good luck getting this reversed. And again, I understand. Like, I can't make an argument that you could get some kind of reform of USAID through the Congress. Look at what they're saying. Look at what they're saying. They won't even acknowledge the sins of this agency.
Right.
So yeah, sure. But you need to own what you're endorsing if you are in fact full-throatedly supporting these actions. You are endorsing a reversion to authoritarian fascism. That is what you are endorsing. Now, if you've decided, well, democracy doesn't work, I'm not in that fight anymore, I don't want to be in that fight, okay, but own it. Own it. Admit what you are supporting. You are supporting fascism. You are for fascism. You don't believe democracy works, and I think you have reasons to believe that. Just go ahead and make a case for fascism then. Be honest. Don't pretend this is legal. It's not legal. We all know it's not legal. But you hate USAID so much with good reason. All right, so make the case. But don't pretend that this is consistent with some kind of democratic norms. Don't pretend it's a revolution. Sure, it's a fascist revolution. That's what it is. Right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would put it this way. I would explain it like this. Okay, this is a relatable real life example to people either of a certain age or of a certain constitution in their gut microbiome. Okay, these early days of the Trump administration. You'll see where I'm going with this.
I'm afraid with that.
So these early days of the Trump administration are the prep day before the colonoscopy. Right? It's you drink the shit and it just flushes you out.
Yeah.
And it cleans you out. Right? And it's good to clean all that shit out. Right? It feels good. It's good for you. It's intrinsically good.
In one of my segments.
You clean all that shit out. But the reason they're cleaning all that shit out is because they're gonna jam something up your ass tomorrow.
Exactly.
Right? And that's the next phase. Yes.
It's actually a pretty good metaphor.
It is a pretty good metaphor. You just have to stick with it. You shouldn't prejudge it.
Yeah. You just had to stay with it to the end.
Yeah, just to stick with it all the way to the end. Yeah.
So to explain this a little more, what this maneuver the Democrats are taking is, a hold is essentially a threat to prevent a speedy vote for a nominee in the full Senate. It forces Republicans to jump through hoops and burn floor time to confirm nominees, which adds up when there are many lower-level nominees who might otherwise get fast-tracked to the floor for votes. Nominees require majorities to be confirmed in the Senate. Republicans have 53 senators, so Democrats cannot scuttle Trump's picks on their own, but they can drag out the process and detract from other nominees or bills that GOP leaders prefer to spend time on. Republicans extensively used holds on nominees to protest President Joe Biden's policies over the last 4 years. In 2023, Tommy Tuberville placed a hold on over 400 military promotions for 10 months in 2023 in protest of the Defense Department's abortion travel policy. Senator Josh Hawley briefly placed a blanket hold on civilian nominees for the State Department and the Pentagon in 2021 in protest of the Biden administration's handling of the military withdrawal from Afghanistan. And a group of Senate Republicans placed holds on Biden's nominees, including judicial nominees, in the wake of court cases that were brought against Trump last year. So when you hear all the people who inevitably are going to start screaming about how they're sabotaging Trump and this isn't proper. Remember, this is not something Republicans had any hesitation to do in the previous administration. This is not an unheard of thing. So speaking of Democrats not in any way being willing to acknowledge what USAID actually does, Amy Klobuchar, shutting down USAID is not about efficiency. It's about undermining America's global leadership. USAID counters extremism, fights diseases, and creates more markets for U.S. exports. She's almost telling the truth there. She's just saying it as a positive. This is reckless and dangerous. So Glenn responded to this. The least surprising thing is watching Democrats defend the CIA front known as USAID, deceitfully depicting it as just some nice organization that wants to help. And this article, if you want to look it up, it's still linked online. I checked. This was a very infamous case where they went in as USAID to set up a Twitter in Cuba that would just be sports and weather. And in their own leaked internal memos, they planned on, once they had a big enough audience, flipping the script and trying to use it to incite an uprising and an overthrow of the government. So this is very typical. This is very typical. I want to say this is very much like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Nobody on the right, most people in MAGA, had never heard of it until Humpty Dumpty went on Joe Rogan and called it woke. And 2 days later, everybody was an expert. That's very much what's going on with USAID. This is an organization that the left, and particularly communists, have been screaming against for decades.
Right.
For decades. All of a sudden now, it's a Marxist organization. USAID was a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America.
I mean, such an illiterate thing to say.
Such a moron. And here's Vijay Prashad. Actually, Elon Musk, radical left Marxists such as myself detest USAID. It was a viper's nest of liberal imperialists. Yes.
Right.
Yes. All right. So here, Jackson Hinkle actually tweeted this out. And it's a pretty good little video. Foreign aid is when the poor people of a rich country send money to the rich people of a poor country. This is Michael Parenti's take on what U.S. foreign aid is really about generally.
The economist Ray Brown, when he went to Cuba before the revolution, it was in 1958, he was there about a year or so before, was impressed by how every major road he saw went from a sugar plantation to a refinery to the seaport. While there were whole communities without roads, they couldn't get to doctors, they couldn't have schools, couldn't see a priest. The sugar companies had their roads. And when you send foreign aid to those countries, 9 out of 10 of those dollars goes to build the infrastructure, to subsidize the capital investment of the private corporations, or to pay for the police and the army of that country, not to defend it from foreign invasion, because Uruguay is not going to invade Bolivia, because Taiwan isn't going to be invaded by the Philippines. But they need those big armies to defend their rulers from their own people, because those people are in such a state of immiseration. So that's where our foreign aid goes. And as someone once said, foreign aid is when the poor people, that's us, of a rich country, give money to the rich people of a poor country.
Well said, as always. This is a little clip with some animation of, if you've ever read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, it gets into this pretty thoroughly, how our foreign aid functions as a front for our corporations and our intelligence services working for those corporations. So there's just a little bit about that.
we economic hitmen have managed to create the world's first truly global empire, and it's basically a secret empire. We do it many ways, but principally we identify a country that has resources our corporations covet, like oil, arrange a huge loan to that country from the World Bank or one of its sisters. The money never actually goes to the country. It goes to our own corporations to build big infrastructure projects in that country that help a few very wealthy people, but don't benefit the majority of the people who are too poor to buy electricity or have cars to drive on the highways, and yet they're left holding a huge debt that they can't repay. So we go back at some point and say, you know, you can't pay your debts. Give us a pound of flesh. Sell your oil real cheap to our oil companies. Vote with us on the next critical UN vote. Allow us to build a military base in your backyard. Something along these lines. And when we fail, the jackals go in and either overthrow or assassinate these leaders. And if the jackals fail, as they did in Iraq, then we send in the military. I don't think the failure is capitalism. I think it's a specific kind of capitalism where we've developed, we've created what I consider a mutant viral form of capitalism. And this mutant form of capitalism, which I think is really a predatory form of capitalism, has created an extremely unstable, unsustainable, unjust, and very, very dangerous world.
And I assure you, Amy Klobuchar is very well aware of that.
I've met a lot of terrorists.
Certainly
I've
Ilhan Omar.
I've never met one who wanted to be a terrorist. They're desperate people. If we want to get rid of terrorism, we must get rid of the root causes, that cancer that is destroying our whole system. Because I think it's really important that we understand today we cannot have homeland security unless we understand that the whole planet is our homeland.
All right, so this is, it's very good. So this is Mike Benz. He went on the Joe Rogan show and actually exposed a much wider audience to USAID and what it does. You want to throw that up?
Yep. Okay, so of course, once again, we're doing audio only, so to not step on any toes.
USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy. Now USAID is, you know, a very notorious. It's sort of a switch player. There's no aid in USAID, by the way. That's your brain is being tricked when you see the phrase USAID. It's not an aid organization. The aid in USAID stands for U.S. Agency for International Development. It is developing internationally around the world all of the institutions that the State Department needs to use. So when they are capacity building activist groups in a foreign country, that's because the State Department wants those activists there. Now, USAID, for the first time in its history, it was created in the early 1960s by JFK, 1961. It was created because you had all of this intelligence, statecraft, and military support and logistical aid that was tripping over itself, basically. The military would be funding, would be running aid to certain groups in the region. The State Department would be running aid to certain groups in the region. The intelligence community would, and there was no sort of central coordinator of those capacity building operations. So USAID, by the way, is a $50 billion budget. The entirety of the intelligence community is only $72 billion. So it is more than the CIA and more than the State Department.
Wow.
And aid is basically USAID is effectively a switch player to assist the Pentagon with on the national security front, to assist the State Department on the national interest front, or to assist the intelligence community on a sort of clandestine operations front. So,
all right. So think of it this way: in the post-World War II decolonizing era, you can't just send the troops in and occupy the world anymore, right? So if you're going to have a global empire, how are you going to have a global empire? Well, you've got to find more clandestine means to control the world. It's not the British Empire. You can't just send the redcoats and the pith helmets in, right? You got to find craftier ways to do it. So you develop these aid organizations. Why is USAID getting all of that money? Because that is taking the place of overt colonization. You
Right.
send in these aid organizations. That is a way of colonizing these countries under the guise of foreign aid. That is the function that it serves. That's why it gets so much money. It's not getting all that money to give people porridge.
Right. Right.
So this Mike Benz tweeted this out. USAID literally set up fake AIDS prevention workshops to topple foreign governments. Beginning as early as October 2009, a project overseen by the U.S. Agency for International Development sent Venezuelan, Costa Rican, and Peruvian young people to Cuba in hopes of ginning up rebellion. The travelers worked undercover, often posing as tourists, and traveled around the island scouting for people they could turn into political activists. In one case, the workers formed an HIV prevention workshop that memos called the perfect excuse for the program's political goals, a gambit that could undermine America's efforts to improve health globally. They also did this in Pakistan. They set up a fake vaccine drive. That's one of the most famous incidents. USAID actually got caught, and the CIA had to put out a non-binding letter. Glenn talks about this in his interview with Mike Benz. They had to actually put out a non-binding letter saying they wouldn't use health programs as a front anymore. Wyatt Reed here from Gray Zone. Remember when NED paid rappers, artists, actors, and sponsored, quote, transgender dance performances to destabilize Bangladesh politics? Sure would be a shame if they were permanently defunded. As I said earlier, Wyatt, that's a nice thought. That's not what they're doing. That's not what they're doing.
And just everybody knows NED, National Endowment for
Democracy. All right, so this is creepy. Of course, Max had a lot to say about all this. This is from 2023. The USAID-sponsored Visa and Google-assisted Daya app not only forces Ukrainian into a digital ID panopticon, it encourages them to snitch on fellow citizens, reporting them as Russian collaborators so they can be arrested and disappeared. Now, this video is creepy and dystopian as hell. This is a good example of what your tax dollars are going to with USAID.
War bonds aimed at rebuilding the liberated and soon-to-be deoccupied Ukrainian cities. State mortgage. Military, medics, teachers, and scientists can apply for the state mortgage right in the app. E-Enemy, a chatbot that helps any citizen safely transfer info about the location of Russian troops, names of collaborators, and enemy movements to the armed forces. Numerous attacks of Russian army destroyed a number of TV towers. To provide Ukrainians with uninterrupted access to information, we launched Dia Radio and Dia TV, so that even under blackouts, millions could feel present. And added the in-app Army of Drones game to help Ukrainians both distract and donate to the common purpose. Has the enemy launched cyber attacks on Ukraine? Of course they have, and they failed. Even when the world is falling apart, our main task is to protect the people. Together, we can build a stronger one.
Creepy. This is the president of El Salvador chiming in, Nayib Bukele, who actually is Palestinian, apparently. Most governments don't want USAID funds flowing into their countries because they understand where much of that money actually ends up. While marketed as support for development, democracy, and human rights, the majority of these funds are funneled into opposition groups, NGOs with political agendas, and destabilizing movements. At best, maybe 10% of the money reaches real projects that help people in need. And, that tracks exactly with what Parenti said, $1 out of every 10. There are such cases, but the rest is used to fuel dissent, finance protests, and undermine administrations that refuse to align with the globalist agenda. Cutting this so-called aid isn't just beneficial for the United States, it's also a big win for the rest of the world. Glenn responded to that. USAID, like the National Endowment for Democracy, are well-documented CIA fronts that are designed to manipulate other countries' internal politics for the benefits of DC elites and nobody else in the US. Both agencies have wrought destruction and can't die soon enough. And this is Max also responding to him. Bukele is right. And while US aid infiltrates societies and trains regime change chaos agents, the US regime sanctions politically independent countries and cuts them off from multilateral development programs that actually produce results. This is Kit Clarenberg, kind of fusing the woke complaint that you're hearing more from MAGA than the geopolitical complaint. Absolutely wild stuff. USAID is a multi-billion-dollar annual global corruption and money laundering racket, carrying out coups and destabilization while handing out free condoms, waving rainbow flags, and enriching tiny captured sections of target countries. It's beyond satire. And this is a good example of what we've often talked about domestically, about how the LGBTQ agenda, DEI, all of these concepts function to cover up a deeply corrupt corporate agenda. They need this to pretend that what they're doing is actually motivated by a desire to help people. If they did not have that movement, they'd have to invent it. And many would argue, and I would agree, that to a large extent, these same intelligence services did invent it.
Well, we've been playing the woke card against Russia for almost 1,000 years. I mean, Russia stayed Orthodox when most of Europe went Catholic, so they were unwoke back then too.
Right.
That's always been a pretext. Yeah.
There you go. So here's another one, just getting a little more into USAID sins. Former fake Venezuelan president Juan Guaido is one of the largest single recipients of USAID support in recent years. You can see him below with members of the Colombian narco cartel Los Rastrojos, who assisted USAID's stunt on the Venezuelan border in 2019. That's Max Blumenthal. Another one from Max. USAID gave tens of millions of US dollars to the Syrian White Helmets to spur regime change through a series of cynical deceptions. Below are White Helmets members celebrating Al-Qaeda's takeover of Idlib in 2015. Thanks in part to USAID, these fanatics now control the country. And here's Aaron. The U.S. government funding propaganda and disinformation via USAID and NED is a legitimate issue. An equal issue is the fact that establishment media outlets often cite these same USAID, NED-funded groups without acknowledging their U.S. state funding. One example among many is Bellingcat, an open source, in quotes, website, which U.S. media never identifies as NED NATO state funded. Why does private media conceal state propaganda? Taibbi has actually gotten into Bellingcat and some of his reporting about the censorship industrial complex. So now we've laid out a pretty clear case. All the worst things you ever heard about USAID are absolutely true. Yes, the Democrats are covering up the reality of what this agency is, trying to cloak themselves in this mask of defending institutions when really they're just defending a horrible realpolitik CIA front organization. Yes, absolutely. So Trump's press secretary, I'm sure when she goes out there to talk about what's wrong with USAID, is going to talk about coups, is going to talk about the way it functions to destabilize autonomous nations, that it hurts our image in the world. I'm sure that's what she's going to address.
Over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru, I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do, to get the fraud, waste, and abuse out of our federal government. Thank you, guys.
That's weird. That's weird. She didn't actually address any of the major she didn't talk about the Cuba fake Twitter thing. She didn't talk about the Pakistan fake vaccine drive. She didn't talk about any of that. She just talked about woke stuff that actually didn't cost nearly as much as those other efforts to destabilize governments did. Maybe Marco Rubio can clear this up for us. Libs of TikTok seem to like what he had to say. Marco Rubio spitting pure fire. Fire, I tells you.
Well, look, I mean, my frustration with USAID goes back to my time in Congress. It's a completely unresponsive agency. It's supposed to respond to policy directives of the State Department, and it refuses to do so. So the functions of USAID, there are a lot of functions of USAID that are going to continue, that are going to be part of American foreign policy, but it has to be aligned with American foreign policy. I said very clearly during my confirmation hearing that every dollar we spend and every program we fund, that will be aligned with the national interest of the United States. And USAID has a history of sort of ignoring that and deciding that they're somehow a global charity separate from the national interest. These are taxpayer dollars. And so I'm very troubled by these reports that they've been unwilling to cooperate with people who are asking simple questions about what does this program do, who gets the money, who are our contractors, who's funded, and that sort of level of insubordination makes it impossible to conduct a sort of mature and serious review that I think foreign aid writ large should have. We're spending.
Okay. So he didn't actually say a single word about how he's disturbed by their clandestine operations overseas. He emphatically said that they're not disbanding USAID. They want to bring it to heel. He didn't say he's disturbed by the fact that it functions as a front organization for the intelligence services. He said he's disturbed essentially by it functioning as a rogue agency. He feels that they don't have enough control over what they do. But he didn't say anything about being bothered by any of this stuff that everyone's talking about. You wanted to say something, Keith?
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it sounds to me in that little soundbite like he's saying they were not subservient enough to the
They're
U.S.
not
empire.
subservient enough to the U.S. empire. Yeah, he actually complained about them functioning as a charity.
Yeah,
that seemed to be his complaint. He didn't want them doing that kind of thing.
That's strange because we just showed a whole lot of evidence to show they're pretty subservient.
They're pretty subservient to the goals
I mean,
of
subservient
U.S.
probably
empire.
isn't even the right word. They are an arm of it.
They are an arm of the global empire. Yeah.
Apparently not enough.
Apparently not enough, and apparently they're too woke. They're too woke. You see, when they want you looking over here, they're gonna go woke. So you don't look at what they're doing over here. Oh, look, it's woke. It's woke. They're not actually going to direct you to the actual problem. And listen, man, I expect that from MAGA because they like to hear that, and that's why they feed that to that. There's a lot of people who should know better who are not asking these questions. So somebody who does know better, naturally, is Caitlin Johnston. Oh my God, this is what you guys got so excited about? A soft power organ of the U.S. government getting reshuffled under the State Department, the U.S. government's primary soft power agency under Marco Bloody Rubio. Only by the most rigorous mental gymnastics is this significant. Thank you, Caitlin.
Made me hungry for a blooming onion. She said bloody.
And Outback Steakhouse. I shouldn't even do that. Now all the Aussies are gonna be like, that was terrible. That didn't sound anything like an Australian. My wife used to say I sounded like a pirate whenever I tried to do Australian. Dan Cohen. Yesterday, Elon Musk was calling USAID a criminal organization that must die. Yeah, he says a lot of things, Dan. Now it's confirmed that USAID has been reshuffled into Marco Rubio's State Department, and Musk's top influencers are going along with the Trump administration's charade. The empire isn't going away, it's reconstituting. Exactly. Whitney, of course, Putting a regime change cheerleading neocon like Rubio in charge doesn't mean the corruption at USAID ends now. Quit being taken for a ride.
Such negativity.
Yeah, she's blackpilling everybody like she does. So she elaborated on this. Folks, if you're allergic to black pills, there's a good time to go get a beer. For people saying Elon is trustworthy and USAID is bad, do you guys remember Elon's "we will coup whoever we want, deal with it" statement over the 2019 coup in lithium-rich Bolivia that he was poised to benefit from? Funny, people seem to have forgotten that. Even if USAID is completely dismantled, that certainly does not mean that regime change ops will stop. Oligarchs can just fund them directly. They largely control the controversial NGOs that USAID funded anyway. Sorry for raining on the parade, but handing over major government ops to intelligence and military-linked oligarchs is unlikely to be the win against the deep state you think it is. It is ultimately a deeper centralization of power, and historically that doesn't end well. Thank you, Whitney, for the customary words of wisdom that are too often lacking in these spaces. Here's Brian Berlatic, former Marine and expert in this area. Everyone's celebrating USAID's website going down and its X account disappearing. Need to take a moment and think. If USAID, NED, IRI, NDI are actually eliminated, the work they are doing will be transferred back to covert operations conducted by organizations like the CIA, making them more difficult to detect and expose. This will enhance, not deter, U.S. interference abroad. The NED, even before the Trump administration took office, had for months been taking down financial disclosures. Something is obviously going on, and people should avoid jumping to conclusions before they are certain as to what it is. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio himself said foreign aid was only on pause and that much of the funding would eventually resume. The Trump administration is telling us it will continue pursuing regime change and military confrontation around the globe, including and especially with Iran and China. Do we honestly think they will abandon subversion and interference as tools? No, obviously not. Now, Berlatic had an interesting exchange with Elon Musk. Elon tweeted out, "Those who know, please reply to this post listing all the evil things that NED has done. It's a long list." So Berlatic responded with a video. Democracy is a process of self-determination. Thus, a U.S. organization posing as promoting democracy abroad is obviously involved in political interference the U.S. would not, should not tolerate any other nation conducting against the U.S. itself. Then he goes on about what Whitney mentioned, Elon's former avowed support for coups, but says, hey, I was a Marine. I once fought for U.S. empire. Maybe you're changing your mind. But then he kind of does his mic drop here. Finally, if we're investigating NED and want to reform USAID, why is the U.S. under Trump putting Secretary Rubio in charge of USAID after he spent years eagerly advancing the NED's agenda on the board of directors of its subsidiary, the International Republican Institute? Will he be investigated as well? And he includes this image of IRI congratulating board member Senator Marco Rubio on his nomination as U.S. Secretary of State. Folks, it's a big club and you ain't in it. You are not in the club. Now, finally, this is kind of an epilogue, little philosophical reverie. Marco Rubio said something very interesting and uncharacteristically honest about the course that U.S. empire is likely to take over the next few years.
Brazil, in our hemisphere, largest country in the Western Hemisphere south of us, cut a trade deal with China. They're going to, from now on, do trade in their own currencies, get right around the dollar. They're creating a secondary economy in the world, totally independent of the United States. We won't have to talk about sanctions in 5 years because there'll be so many countries transacting in currencies other than the dollar. that we won't have the ability to sanction them.
Holy shit. Whoa. Is that little Marco? Little Marco say that? Well, our friend Nick Cruz really appreciated that. Watching the U.S. empire dismantle itself is hilarious. I've been waiting for this my entire life. I didn't honestly expect MAGA to wave the white flag so early and in such embarrassing fashion. On a more serious note, and this is what we want to end with, I would like to discuss this because I think the questions that Arnaud Bertrand raises here are very interesting. Because, yes, of course, we're saying, well, don't you see what they're really doing? And sure, they're not dismantling any of this, but they may very well be downsizing it. And that's what Bertrand seems to believe. It's becoming clearer and clearer that we're looking at a seismic shift in the US's relationship with the world between, one, the US dismantling its foreign interference apparatuses like USAID, Marco Rubio stating that we're now in a multipolar world with multi-great powers in different parts of the planet, and that the post-war global order is not just obsolete, it is now a weapon being used against us. 3, the tariffs on supposed allies like Mexico, Canada, or the EU. This is the US effectively saying our attempt at running the world is over, to each his own. We're now just another great power, not the indispensable nation. It looks, quote, dumb, as the Wall Street Journal just wrote, if you are still mentally in the old paradigm. But it's always a mistake to think that what the US or any country does is dumb. I might debate Mr. Bertrand about that, but okay, continue. Hegemony was going to end sooner or later, and now the US is basically choosing to end it on its own terms. It is the post-American world order brought to you by America itself. Even the tariffs on allies viewed under this angle make sense as it redefines the concept of allies. They don't want, or maybe rather can't afford, vassals anymore, but rather relationships that evolve based on current interests. You can either view it as decline, because it does unquestionably look like the end of the American empire, or as avoiding further decline, controlled withdrawal from imperial commitments in order to focus resources on core national interests rather than being forced into an even messier retreat at a later stage. In any case, it is the end of an era. And while the Trump administration looks like chaos to many observers, they're probably much more attuned to the changing realities of the world and their own country's predicament than their predecessors. Acknowledging the existence of a multipolar world and choosing to operate within it, rather than trying to maintain an increasingly costly global hegemony, couldn't be delayed much further. It looks messy, but it is probably better than maintaining the fiction of American primacy until it eventually collapses under its own weight. This is not to say that the US won't continue to wreak havoc on the world. And in fact, we might be seeing it become even more aggressive than before. Because when it previously was badly and very hypocritically trying to maintain some semblance of self-proclaimed rules-based order, it now doesn't have to pretend it is under any constraint, not even the constraint of playing nice with allies. It's the end of the US empire, but definitely not the end of the US as a major disruptive force in world affairs. And he ends with this. All in all, this transformation may mark one of the most significant shifts in international relations since the fall of the Soviet Union. And those most unprepared for it, as is already painfully obvious, are America's vassals, caught completely flat-footed by the realization that the patron they've relied on for decades is now treating them as just another set of countries to negotiate with. I think he's probably got it right. I think he's probably nailed it. I would agree, all kidding aside, that it's always a mistake to assume that people are stupid, for that to be your first assumption. They clearly thought through what they were going to do. Now, Trump may not completely understand this overall picture. And it's quite likely the people around him are using him to push this kind of an agenda. But when you see people very often say, well, why do we agree to these unfavorable trade deals? Why do we agree to these imbalances? Why are we protecting these countries? Why are we putting our troops there? It's not because we're stupid. It's not because we don't realize. We're buying them off. And we're maintaining a combination of a threat against people by putting our troops everywhere, and also a promise, hey, you have to do what we say or we'll stop defending you. These things are not done by accident. What Bertrand is arguing, I think maybe rightly, is the people behind Trump, at the very least, realize this is not sustainable. We need to start to wind this up. So our trade deals can no longer be a de facto means of maintaining alliances. They have to actually economically benefit our country, because we just don't have the resources, or won't for very much longer, to maintain relations based on an assumption of, as Rubio pointed out, the dollar is the reserve currency. They see the end of that coming, and they're saying, well, we could wrap this up now, or we could do it the hard way later. So let's do it while we can control the process. That may be what's really behind this USAID thing. It is certainly not a care for the USAID functioning as a front for the intelligence services. They're not even talking about that. Rubio didn't talk about it. Trump's press secretary didn't talk about it. They don't give a shit about that. That's what they'll continue to do. But they're going to get rid of everything that they consider wasteful and try to pare it down to what they consider essential.
Yeah, our friend Anish Shivani always made the point that just like intuitively, MAGA is a recognition of the end of the U.S. empire. There's a recognition of that collapse embedded within it, even if it's not articulated by Trump, but even if it's not sort of consciously held at front of mind by the MAGA rank and file. Like this articulation of America first is that, in the sense that, when I was on the line at the Trump rally, when I did my New Hampshire coverage, and I'm going, up and down the line for blocks and blocks and blocks of the freezing cold, these people are lined up to see Trump, and you ask them about Ukraine, and they say, well, they should have to fight themselves. It's not for us to give them any money. And a lot of them had a similar answer to Israel. With Israel, there's a little more brainwashing there, obviously, coming from the top and from like religious communities, whatever. But even that, the MAGA base not huge on the Greater Israel Project, right? I mean, there's a huge contingent
that has not
of them.
been my experience when I've been in MAGA crowds.
Yeah,
they're going along with it because the boss tells them they have to.
Right, exactly. So, when you look at the reluctance to get involved with other countries to their benefit, what you're really seeing is a great departure in longstanding bipartisan American orthodoxy, which is that America leading the world by example and by force is both feasible and desirable. And what this MAGA movement ultimately says somewhere within it is that no, leading the world by force and example is neither feasible nor should we want to. Right. And
except
part of, well, yes, exactly. Well, yes, like I said, there's a lot. That's a more loaded topic for different reasons that we will, we talk about quite often. But there is philosophically an acknowledgement that it is not in our interest, nor should it be in our interest, to govern the world anymore. And what really offends the liberal class about this, what really offends the Democratic Party about this, quite frankly, is, as you saw, Joe Biden refused to let go of that idea. To let go of that idea, to the point where he was willing to escalate in Ukraine and agitate for World War III. Because when you look at what Bertrand is saying there, when you talk about we could do this the easy way or the hard way, well, a lot of empires collapse after prolonged and grotesque and very costly military conflicts. And what this suggests is, if we see the writing on the wall, hey, maybe we can pull back before it comes to that. So in other words, World War III with Russia, Iran, and China doesn't have to be the thing that brings us to imperial collapse. Maybe we can just wind it down before it comes to that. So yes, I do think he's right about that.
Yep.
All right. Is that our take? Is that our take on USAID?
That's our take.
All right.
That's our story. We're sticking to it.
Put it in a box and put a bow on it. Derek P, thanks for the $5.
I'll be back.
Oh, okay. All right. There's still people in our space that think all the system needs is a little tweaking. That's a problem. Thank you, Derek P. Appreciate that. And Tuthaza, thanks for the super sticker. Appreciate that very much. Barbara Howard, row part 2, which British pronunciation. It means argument, having a row. Yeah, that's what I thought. Having a row or having a row. Having a row. Okay, having a row. Is that what it is? R-A. I got it now. Okay. All right. We don't use that interpretation. All right. Gotcha. Thank you, Barbara. Appreciate that. Francois Rabelais, USAID, U.S. Agency for International Development, hardly an aid agency. It's a regime change agency, Maidan, etc. Yes, thank you. Hillary Hinton over on Rumble. We got some Rumble rants. We didn't forget about you Rumblers. Can you guys do me a solid and postpone the show till tomorrow? I have 2 o'clock reservations at Dorsia, and I have to return some videotapes. Thanks again for having my back. Thank you, Hillary Hinton. Appreciate that. Movie night suggestion, Mouse That Roared, starring Peter Sellers. All right, I will float that to Russ. Victor Shakopopoulos, just watch your last show. Pretty bold for 2 Yanks to trash other people's cuisines. It's not just borscht and pierogi. Try a roast duck, goose, or pork knuckle. Trife warning before spreading fake news. I mean, all right. I mean, I would quibble there. I mean, yeah, you're right. Technically, we are Yankees, and that's not Yankee cuisine. But, you know, I've eaten a decent amount of it. It's not my thing. Keaton's sweater looks ridiculously cozy to this Albertan in negative 25 Celsius weather. Thank you. Yes. I was considering changing this because it's a gray sweater and I have a gray backdrop, but I think it looks all right. It is cozy. It's a nasty, cold, windy day here. Eric Rousseau, looks like Trump is going to cut veterans benefits and SSDI. I guess the military Trump supports are military-industrial complex CEOs. Those are the real American heroes. Duopoly exit. Thank you, Eric Rousseau. Appreciate that. Crystal Waters, how funny would it be if we got Trump to pass reparations? It's the right thing to do, but it would be so hilarious to watch libs, MSM, Debs, twisted knots to tell us why it's bad. I'm forever optimistic. Thank you, Crystal. Appreciate that. Elon gives people like Kurt Metzger ammo to some kind of Asperger's cabal. There's not. I'm joking. And when I say the Asperger salute, I'm saying, yeah, obviously it wasn't not an autistic thing. Just kidding. El Kaminsky, thanks for the $2. Right-wing woke politics each equals reparations are racist and opposing genocide is anti-Semitic. South Africa Today illustrates how identity politics obfuscates material struggle. Good point. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see here. Do you think Elon has Secret Service? I'd very much like to kick him in the dick. Unrelated. Keaton, did your barber fall off the wagon, or does your hair just give 0 fucks all the time? Well, I mean, it gives 0 fucks most of the time. It gives even fewer today. I was up all night with the baby last night because the illness has struck our family, so I got almost 0 sleep. So that explains my look today. Today I have an excuse. Most days I do not, I'll admit that. Why did they stop Bernie the Cuck in 2016? Polled 12-plus points over Trump compared to Hillary. They could have got that cuck to invade Iran. Thank you, Abiding. Appreciate that. John M. in Minnesota, per Dave DeCamp, 30 Iranian opposition orgs and media outlets have lost funding due to pause in USAID funding. Good news in my estimation. Oh, yeah. No, there's plenty of good news. Absolutely. All right. We're going to pause for a quick word from one of our dissident sponsors, DJ Vulture, who is an artist, producer, and DJ in Detroit, Michigan. His debut album, Rise, is a politically charged sonic exploration that traverses multiple genres. Tracks like Politrix, If You Want to Get Hurt, and Indira Chain invoke the memory of Public Enemy, Wu-Tang Clan, and Company Flow, while pieces such as 1849, Brainwashed Pink, and Cannibal Zombie are brutally industrial, reminiscent of Skinny Puppy and Ministry. Others, such as I Will Not, Circles in the Sky, and Singularity, are ethereal, dreamy, and hallucinogenic. With Rise, DJ Vulture has expanded beyond your typical electronic music to include live vocals, guitars, synths, percussion, And of course, it wouldn't be a DJ record without turntablism. So help support the underground and pick up the soundtrack for the revolution, Rise, on Bandcamp for just $10. But you don't have to memorize a fancy link. You can simply go to dodissidents.com/DJ to take a listen and get your hands on that album, Rise by DJ Vulture. Thank you for supporting the dissident sponsor artist community. All right. Let's see what else we got here. All right. Okay.
I got to close this door.
Okay. All right. No problem. I'll read another few of these Rumble rants over here. Low light recovery. Thanks for the $10. We need more adversarial press like you are familiar with Jay Abbott railroading Richard Allen in Indiana. Check out R&M Productions for a breakdown. If you two covered it, a lot of eyes would watch it. I have not heard of that, so I will check into that. Thank you, Low Light Recovery. Appreciate the kind words. Okay. All right. What do we got next on the list here? All right, we got a couple of Israel stories.
Time to rock.
Time to rock. That's right. Okay, folks. So
we're not doing the Grammys?
Yeah, no Grammy coverage. No Grammy coverage today. Folks, Donald Trump defunded UNRWA the first time he was president, and here he is formalizing it a second time. Trump to target UN rights body and Palestinian Relief Agency. U.S. President Donald Trump is expected on Tuesday to stop U.S. engagement with the United Nations Human Rights Council and continue a halt to funding for the UN Palestinian Relief Agency, UNRWA, a White House official said on Monday. The move coincides with a visit to Washington by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has long been critical of UNRWA, accusing the agency of anti-Israel incitement and its staff of being involved in terrorist activities against Israel. So, program note for anyone watching the clip, we're recording this segment just before 4 o'clock when Trump and Netanyahu are scheduled to have a joint press conference. So we will have that coverage for you on Thursday's live stream. But that's not included in this since they just scheduled it a bit too late for us to work it in. An UNRWA spokesperson declined to comment on an order that has not yet been issued, describing the agency's financial situation as already very, very bad. UN Human Rights Council acting spokesperson Pascal Sim said he was unaware of any communication from Washington, but that no formal process existed since the U.S. is not currently a voting member. No, human rights, those are for the peasant countries. During Trump's first term in office from 2017 to 2021, he also cut off funding for UNRWA, questioning its value, saying that Palestinians needed to agree to renew peace talks with Israel, and calling for unspecified reforms. The first Trump administration also quit the 47-member Human Rights Council halfway through a 3-year term over what it called chronic bias against Israel and a lack of reform. The U.S. is not currently a member of the Geneva-based body. Under Democratic former President Joe Biden, the U.S. was reelected and served a 2022 to 2024 term. Biden's envoy to the council previously urged Trump to stay active, partly to counter China's dangerous influence. Oh, really? Was that the reason? Was that the reason? This is what we told you, folks. You know, the Biden administration felt some need to signal that they gave a shit about the genocide because their base are the kinds of people with the sensibilities that, don't really take to, massacring an imprisoned population of colonized brown people, right? So Biden had to kind of make these symbolic gestures like he cared and was trying, even though he obviously wasn't. Trump feels no such obligation. Israel's UN ambassador, Danny Danon, on Monday praised the expected moves by Trump, accusing the Human Rights Council of aggressively promoting extreme anti-Semitism. At the time, UNRWA has long lost its status as an independent humanitarian organization and has turned into a terrorist authority controlled by Hamas under the guise of a humanitarian agency, he said. UNRWA Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini said last week that the agency has been the target of a fierce disinformation campaign to portray the agency as a terrorist organization. We'll get more into that in a bit. The U.S. was UNRWA's biggest donor, providing $300 million to $400 million a year. But Biden paused funding in January 2024 after Israel accused about a dozen UNRWA staff of taking part in the deadly October 7th attack on Israel by Palestinian militants Hamas that triggered the war in Gaza. The U.S. Congress then formally suspended contributions to UNRWA until at least March 2025. UNRWA provides aid, health, and education services to millions of Palestinians in Gaza, the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. The UN has said that 9 UNRWA staff may have been involved in the October 7th attack and were fired. A Hamas commander in Lebanon, killed in September by Israel, was also found to have had an UNRWA job. The UN has vowed to investigate all accusations made and repeatedly asked Israel for evidence, which it says has not been provided. An Israeli ban went into effect on January 30th that prohibits UNRWA from operating on its territory or communicating with Israeli authorities. UNRWA has said operations in Gaza and the West Bank will also suffer. So we're going to read more from Philippe Lazzarini here, the UNRWA spokesperson. But I just have to reiterate these numbers because we got into this more when we covered this throughout 2024, which is that UNRWA is an organization that employs 30,000 people, 14,000 of whom are in Gaza. And so out of 14,000 in Gaza, nine were accused of having taken part in the October 7th attack. None of those accusations have been proven. 9 out of 14,000. You're talking about like a 20th of 1%. 1% of 14,000 is 140. So what's 140 divided by 9? What, a 15? Yeah, like you're talking about a tiny fraction of 1% has been accused of having participated. So Philippe Lazzarini, and based on accusations on a fraction of 1% of members, you are going to defund the most vital aid organization in a strip of land that has been reduced to rubble, where we already know famine, disease, and dehydration are running rampant. So Philippe Lazzarini clears up a few points here. Disinformation and misinformation continue. Fact-checking is key to credible reporting. So this was yesterday he put this out. Here's a recap of events. In January 2024, I received verbal information about the alleged participation of 12 UNRWA staff in the horrible massacre of October 7th. Additional allegations were made 2 months later about 7 other staff. If these allegations were confirmed, it would be an unspeakable betrayal of UN values and Palestine refugees. Any crimes must be investigated and those responsible held accountable. The Secretary General launched an investigation by OIOS that failed to substantiate any of the allegations. It concluded in the case of 9 staff, the evidence provided could, if authenticated and corroborated, provide a factual basis to conclude that the UNRWA staff member may have engaged in conduct sanctionable under the applicable UNRWA regulations and rules. Despite that the evidence was not corroborated or authenticated, I have decided to terminate the contracts of those staff in the interest of the agency. 1 staff was reinstated since all recognized he was misidentified. The remaining 9 staff remain fully suspended despite no substantiation of the allegations. My decisions protect the interest of the agency and the communities we assist, especially in Gaza. UNRWA has 13,000 staff members in Gaza. They are dedicated to serve their communities. Labeling them and making unproven accusations against them harm people's lives. So what he's saying there is they took punitive actions against the people who were accused, pardon me, sorry, to have taken part in October 7th. They took punitive actions against them despite having no proof. In addition to that, I remembered this because we actually covered this at the time, excuse me, which was almost an entire year ago at this point. Matthew Miller at a press conference when he was asked by Ryan Grimm about the Biden administration's decision to pull funding from UNRWA, where they got this information that they had participated in October 7th. And here's what Morlock had to say at the time.
A little light on the timeline around the UNRWA decision. The Israeli government has since shared that intelligence dossier with some members of the press. They said they shared the dossier, I believe, on that Friday.
On Friday, that's correct.
The decision was also announced that Friday, the same day the court ruling came out. How was how were you able to make such a fast decision?
It's a good question. So I think there has been some confusion about this. This matter was not first brought to us by the government of Israel. It was brought to us by UNRWA itself. UNRWA brought this matter to the government of the United States, the State Department, on Wednesday of last week, and said that they were aware of allegations by the government of Israel, and they had conducted their own initial assessment and found those allegations to be credible, and were taking disciplinary action against a number of people.
So UNRWA knew they were going to be accused by Israel. And so UNRWA took it upon themselves to basically report themselves to the United States to say, hey, we've heard there are these allegations coming down the pike, and we just want you to know we're handling this as responsibly as we can. We're going to fire those who are suspected of having taken place in October 7th. So not only did they fire the people, they told the United States, hey, we are doing our best to handle this. The reason they told on themselves is because they didn't want the United States to defund them. They wanted to say, so you know, when they make this accusation, we are getting rid of the people who have been suspected, quote unquote, of having done this. And what did it get them? Nothing. They got defunded anyway. And now they're being punished anyway a year later for the same reason. They are damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. This is the impossible situation of the Palestinian people more broadly. There's nothing they can do right. There's nothing they can do right that will get them a better outcome. They are fucked either way. That's what it's like to be colonized. Not only are they being defunded, and not only have the UNRWA staff acted very bravely in Gaza to get this aid in, as you can see here, this just tweeted out today. UNRWA tweets out over 270 UNRWA team members killed in Gaza. So here is UNRWA's director of communications, Juliet Tuma, explaining this. Where did that go? Where the hell did that go? There it is.
The war began 15 months ago. We've had more than 270 team members of UNRWA killed in the Gaza Strip. Staying on that, we've had at least 2/3 of UNRWA facilities being hit during the war, including those that were used as shelters for the displaced families. We had staff arrested. We continue to have UNRWA staff currently in Israeli detention centers, staff who are from Gaza, around 20 of them.
So there you have it. Just another horrible injustice perpetrated against UNRWA, much to the joy of course, UN ambassador to Israel, Elise Stefanik.
Well, not yet. She's actually one of the confirmations on hold because of USAID.
Oh, okay. So she's not technically sworn in. All right. Well, she'll get there if and when that ever comes to fruition. But she is the nominee, I should say. Thank you.
Yes.
Today's executive order is the correct action by President Trump to deliver America first, peace through strength, moral leadership. Moral leadership. The UN Human Rights Council is a den of human rights abusers and disgraceful and obsessive anti-Semitism. UNRWA must be defunded and dismantled. U.S. taxpayers' dollars should never prop up terrorism. Full stop. So that's the story of UNRWA.
I've really come to hate that phrase. Full stop. All the
Full
worst
stop.
people use it.
Yeah, all the worst people
I've
use
never
it. That's
met
true.
anyone I didn't want to slap who used that term.
That's true. Everyone who uses full stop is awful.
Is an asshole.
Right. Like Barry Weiss. You know, a lot of libs
Right.
use it, but then you got like Barry Weiss uses it. Now Elise
Yes.
Stefanik. Full
Yes.
stop. That is
like,
true.
try to find one person who uses that who is not a total asshole.
That's true. That's true. There is no one who uses that phrase who is not a complete asshole. But yeah, I mean this just shows you the impossible spot that they're in. the absolutely impossible spot that they're in. And, Biden held these funds up through March, and this is very much an example of continuity of government, phrase that's been in the news lately, where you have Biden really just passing the ball to Trump to make this permanent, as we knew he would, because he did this the first time. He defunded UNRWA the first time. And this also really should poke a hole in any supposition that Trump has peace and good outcomes in mind for the Palestinians. Because right now, when you have a ceasefire in place, would be the time that you would refund UNRWA, right? Like if your rationale for pursuing this ceasefire was to actually bring peace and relief to the Palestinians, of course you would want UNRWA up and running as quickly as possible. You would undo that payment pause because now there's a ceasefire. So now there's an opportunity to actually get aid trucks in, which we know aid trucks are coming back in. But now is when you would want to really bolster that effort. Instead, as it appears, and as it was pretty apparent days after Trump was sworn in, he really wanted the ceasefire so he could bring the hostage families to the inaugural ceremonies and have that photo op and get credit for that. Because if you gave a damn about the Palestinians, you would, of course, want UNRWA in operation, at least through the ceasefire, even from Donald Trump's standpoint. But apparently, no. Apparently, that is more aid that has to go.
Yeah, well, this is the game that Israel plays. Remember when they bombed the first hospital? Oh, no, we would never. We would never. That was a Hamas rocket that accidentally went off course. They went on to quite intentionally, indisputably bomb every hospital in Gaza. If you remember when this first came up with UNRWA, it was unthinkable that you would just completely cut off the main aid organization for Gaza. I mean, the Israelis were pushing for it. But gradually, and this is the whole history of the country. They nibble away at standards. They nibble away at prohibitions. They nibble away at humanitarianism until finally they get what they want. This is what they wanted from the beginning. Who's responsible now for Palestinian aid? Israel. The country that this is putting the Third Reich in charge of humanitarian aid for their victims.
Right. Yep.
It's unbelievable. And this is a big part of why I have very little patience for collaborators with this administration, man. And that's what I call them, collaborators. You're a fucking collaborator, man. Why was it a deal breaker when Biden was doing it? And less than this. And yeah, we're of the opinion they were just driving to the same destination more slowly. But if you're willing to compromise on this point, why didn't you compromise with them? Is it the transgender medicine? Like, what is it? What is the thing that would tip you over to say, all right, I mean, genocide, I guess I can live with it. What is it? Explain it to me.
Yes. I think that is a good question, and this is just one step that we were pretty confident would come pretty early on. I mean, this is why I said things are ultimately going to get worse. We are seeing, Trump and Netanyahu are talking as we speak. They're talking about figuring out how to get to phase 2 of this ceasefire. What I would say is, obviously, you hope to God it doesn't come to this, but the fact that you had the first ceasefire could make things more dangerous in the long term, assuming you don't get to phase 2, because now the North is going to be repopulated again.
Yeah, they're using the pause to take the West Bank.
Right.
That's
all.
all.
And that too.
They're playing a game. They're playing a game. This is all the Greater Israel Project.
Yep. Well, yes, we are going to do the West Bank next, and yes, that's absolutely true. Let's see here. Please quick research Dan Anthony Mitrioni. Thank you for that. 265005. China Shill. Love my boy Mikey P. Russ, read his Caesar book. All right, there you go.
Oh,
Thanks,
yeah, you
China
wrote a book
Shill.
about Caesar? Because I
alley.
think about Rome once a day.
That's true. Russell thinks about Rome a lot.
The name of the Muslim commentator I mentioned earlier in the show, Shahid Bolson.
Oh, okay. Compassion is power, says Norman Finkelstein was just assaulted by a Zionist. I sent you the Zarafa media video on your Yeah, that was the guy who put the beeper in the pocket, right?
In his pocket.
Yeah, he had a great response to that, too. He says, Jews used to be known for being smart. Brent Yoendo said that to the guy, yeah. Looking forward to you guys calling out leftists that only bash shit libs to pander to MAGA. Got your back. Thank you, Brent Yoendo. Sparky, how will you guys continue to support your ludicrously lavish lifestyle without USAID? Thank you. Sparky, when the EU and UK come begging.
Yeah, we go on.
You're an offshore site. No, go ahead.
Yeah, you get that. You get that a lot if like people don't like your take. Oh, yeah, I guess you're not getting the USAID money. That's what I think about when I climb the 5 flights to my 5th floor walk up to my tiny apartment. I think about all that USAID money that's financing my lavish lifestyle.
Yeah. Hang on one second. I got to change my light. This happens.
There can be what happened? What? You got to change. You got that adult diaper you got to change there? You didn't hear that. Don't tell him I said that.
That happens. I always look like I'm glowing when we do an afternoon show because it gets dark early in the winter. That's better now. What else we got here? Sparky. Where's Sparky? Hold on. Sorry, Sparky. I lost track of where we're at. Here we are, Sparky. Second one. BRICS countries will trade with their own individual country's currency. They're only making clearinghouse structures so the U.S. dollar can't be weaponized against them. They saw how the euros effed up. Thank you, Sparky. Brent Yoendo, Trump is indebted $1 billion to the Rothschilds and made $230 million from AIPAC. Anyone pretending like he's fighting the deep state should be called out. Thank you, Brent Yoendo.
Dude, freaking Scott Bessent, the new Treasury Secretary who gave Musk access to the Treasury payments, got to start working for George Soros. I thought all these people have such a hard-on about George Soros. He literally worked in the department that crashed the British pound. How is this some kind of a fight against the deep state?
Space 99 Yak, thanks for the $4.99. Appreciate that. How much of the Bush, Cheney, Obama, USAID went to the Trump resistance externally and internally? Yeah, that's a good point. Externally and internally, you mean foreign policy wise and inside the organs of the state? I'm not sure what that means. How much of the Bush, Cheney, Obama, USAID went to the Trump resistance externally and internally? I'm assuming you mean like, the axis of countries that maybe stand to lose something from his power. Maybe. I mean, there certainly is. I mean, the thing is, you don't know where that. I'm not convinced at this point who those countries are. Who actually is really invested in seeing that Trump did not come to power. I mean, this is what Russ says all the time. He says you'd either have to reevaluate the deep state or Trump, right? Like, I kind of get the question. Like, you could say, what are you mean like a country like Ukraine and things like that? Like they were rooting against Trump. I could see maybe. So you could kind of fit that into that folder there of a cleansing of the enemies list. But I do think more so it's the Bertrand thing. I think it's a sort of resignation, right? So this doesn't have to happen the hard way, which is good. That's better than the alternative. I mean, with Biden, you would have gotten there the hard way, right? I mean, he was just going to push and push and push and push.
Right. And I'll just say, if you want to talk about 4D chess for Israel, hey, man. If America really does do a controlled withdrawal from the world, nobody really likes you guys, especially now. Not going to be good for you. Without us, it's like the kid who pays the big bodyguard who picks on all the kids, and then that bodyguard moves to another town. You're screwed.
Yeah. Where we got here? Sparky, in fact, all else equal, the BRICS is fine with the U.S. dollar. The rumor about a BRICS currency is to confuse or mislead U.S. government officials. There'll be no BRICS wallet in the BRICS people's smartphone. Thank you, Sparky. Appreciate that very much. The closest thing to a BRICS currency would be a vehicle to transfer big amounts among clearinghouses, but there'll be no BRICS folding money or BRICS coins or BRICS crypto. Sparky says, when the EU and UK come begging, President Trump should require them to start calling their game soccer instead of football in order to get aid. A fitting humiliation and epic troll. Trump should also require them to drop the metric system and adopt the U.S. customary system for further humiliation. Thank you, Sparky. Appreciate that. Jacqueline Naring, thanks for the $100 super sticker. Thank you, Jacqueline. Let's have a cowbell for Jacqueline. Not even a chat to read, just a nice donation. Well, that's lovely. Thank you very, very much. All righty. Let's see here. Do we have any more Rumble rants for the time? We do have some. We will get to some as we go. Sorry about that. Just got to reorient my screen here. Okay. All right. Let's keep on trucking along here. All right. So we just did a segment about UNRWA. We're now going to do one about the West Bank, since this is very, very troubling stuff. So Israel, as we mentioned before, very much taking advantage of the ceasefire in Gaza to ramp up their militarism in the West Bank. This isn't Gaza. This is Jenin in the occupied West Bank. Israel's on a rampage, wiping out homes, massacring civilians, killing children. This isn't war. This is annihilation. And the so-called international community watches in silence, complicit as always. So these are not airstrikes. These are controlled demolitions of 20 plus buildings in the West Bank.
الله أكبر حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل.
Quite the sight. Demolitions in Jenin signal Israel's new approach in the West Bank. The West Bank is the new battleground in Israel's post-October 7th war. Jenin refugee camp is the front line. On Sunday, Israeli forces razed 23 buildings in Jenin, cutting a swath through the camp with simultaneous explosions that were heard across much of the northern West Bank. The large-scale demolitions resembled a tactic used in Gaza, where the Israeli military created corridors to divide the enclave. In Jenin, they appear to signal a more aggressive approach by Israel that could reshape the West Bank physically and politically, Israeli analysts and Palestinians said. Pardon me. If Israel tries to suppress militant groups in the West Bank with the use of large-scale force, many West Bank residents fear the results could echo those in Gaza. The destruction of dense urban areas, the displacement of many civilians, and mounting political anarchy. Israel is bringing the war to the West Bank, said Palestinian politician Mustafa Barghouti, noting that Israeli forces are already expanding their operations to other parts of the territory. The Jenin refugee camp will not return to what it was, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said last week as he visited the camp with army commanders. After the current offensive, which began with airstrikes and a ground forces maneuver in the Jenin camp 2 weeks ago, Israeli forces, quote, will remain in the camp to ensure that terror does not return, he said. Katz didn't say how long Israeli troops would stay or who would govern and provide basic services to the population under a prolonged occupation of the area. The fighting has caused widespread damage to the camp's dense housing, and many families have fled, but others remain, according to local residents. Israeli forces appear to be cutting the Jenin camp into segments, according to local residents and Israeli analysts, widening roads with bulldozers and demolishing buildings to facilitate the movement of troops through the labyrinth of cement and cinder blocks. The method resembles Israeli forces approaching Gaza, albeit on a smaller scale, for the time being anyway, said Michael Milstein, a former head of the Palestinian division at Israeli military intelligence. They are attempting to divide the camp into several parts. It's very similar to northern Gaza, he said. So, let's hear what Donald Trump had to say about this. In case that was all too complicated for you, Trump puts things in very simple terms here, right? So
Yes.
think of it as a pin, a beautiful pin.
It's a small country in terms of land. See this pen, this wonderful pen? My desk is the Middle East. And this pen, the top of the pen, that's Israel. That's not good, right? You know, that's a pretty big difference. I use that as an analogy. It's pretty accurate, actually. It's a pretty small piece of land. And it's amazing that they've been able to do what they've been able to do when you think about it. There's a lot of good, smart brain power, but it is a very small piece of land, no question about it.
Yeah. See, he appreciates Israel from a developer standpoint. Like that's his love of Israel. He's not
Exactly.
ideologically committed to Zionism. He just really is impressed that, the Israelis were able to, force out the Arabs so that they can come in and essentially gentrify the area. I mean, that's what he sees it. He sees it as a big gentrification project, and he loves it. So he's asked about Israel and the West Bank. That's what he's asked about.
It's like the Upper West Side of the Middle East.
Yeah,
Used
right,
to be
exactly,
a lot of
yes.
blacks there. A lot of blacks on the Upper West Side. No more.
No, it's
No more.
amazing. They got them all out. They built some beautiful
them all out.
properties. I built some beautiful properties too. Yeah, exactly. That's the way it sounds.
Used to be you didn't want to walk around there at night.
Yep. No,
Now
that
you
is
got
exactly
some
how he talks about it.
They still got the
Yeah.
Gray's papaya there. Sometimes I go there.
Exactly. Yeah, this was his response. If he would support annexing the West Bank. Let's hear the first part of that one more time.
It's a small country in terms of land. See this pen, this wonderful pen? My desk is the Middle East. And this pen, the top of the pen, that's Israel.
Remember in Wolf of Wall Street where he says, "Sell me this pen."
Yeah.
Sell me this pen. And the putzes who don't know how to close a sale that's what they should have said. See, this pen, this is like Israel.
Yeah,
this is like Israel. It's a beautiful pen, reminds me of Israel. And that paper is the Middle East. So what you got to do is you got to grab this beautiful pen that's Israel and draw all over the paper. Occupy that whole paper with the writing from this beautiful pen. That would have closed the deal. Yeah, so that's how Trump sees it. Let's see how the people see it. Looks like father and daughter here who are waiting to hear on the state of the home in Jenin as the Israeli military forced the family out during raids on the camp in the occupied West Bank.
شو بتطلعوا؟
على دارهم.
شو صار فيها داركم؟
والله
مات عليها الدش. عرفت شو صار فيها؟
لا والله.
بتحاول تطمن عنها؟
بنحاول نطمن ونفوت مش عارفين. الحمد لله.
الحمد لله اليوم بدهم ينسفوا منازل.
وانا بدي منعهم يعني.
Who's going to stop them?
بيعملوا اللي
That's
بدهم
right.
اياه انا بدي منعهم.
معقول تكون داركم؟
الله اعلم. يعني ضرنا مش احسن من هالدور اللي بالمخيم.
Who is going to stop them? Yep. That's a good question. Well, we should just explain to this guy, like, think of it as a pen. Think of it as a pen. On a desk. Right?
Yeah, it's just like a pen. It's actually very small compared to the whole area here.
Yeah. You types of people, you brown Arab people, you have the whole Middle East. Israel's just one pen. So all we're doing here is we're giving them a second pen. There's one more pen, right? Gaza's a third pen, right? Maybe they could have put it to them that way. A mass burial took place yesterday in the Jenin refugee camp, which has endured 14 days of death and destruction at the hands of the occupying forces. Following the atrocities in Gaza, Western-backed Zionists are intensifying slaughter and ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. So, folks, there are some videos that we obviously can't show you here on YouTube of the maniacal Israeli settlers just doing more retail attacks, shall we say, on individuals in the West Bank. Right. These are not airstrikes. These are mobs of deranged lunatics terrorizing the civilian population there. Those attacks have, of course, escalated since Trump lifted the sanctions on them that Biden put on them. So here is this burial site. Okay, so this is a mass burial site, and if you notice, there aren't that many people surrounding the burial site. It's a fairly small gathering of people, considering there are a lot of people there being laid to rest, and that is for a reason. And the reason is, in the West Bank, Israel denied Jenin families right to bury loved ones at home. For nearly 2 weeks, 11 bodies lay in the morgues of Jenin as Israeli raids ravaged the city and its refugee camp. Their families were too frightened to bury them in Jenin because of Israeli snipers, drones, and artillery. Families are afraid to bury their loved ones in the camp cemetery because Israeli snipers are stationed on high buildings, Mahmoud al-Sadi, director of emergency services in Jenin, said on Monday. Some bodies have been in the morgue for over 13 days. We need Israeli clearance just to conduct a burial, and even that has been delayed multiple times. The raid on Jenin comes during a spike in Israeli violence in the West Bank since a fragile ceasefire halted Israel's 15-month assault on Gaza, which has killed close to 62,000 Palestinians. Of course, we think that is a gross underestimation, but that is the, I guess, updated official number now that the ceasefire has allowed them to finally count more bodies and left the enclave in ruins. The operation has driven nearly all of Jenin refugee camps, 20,000 people, from their homes, according to the United Nations. That is a pretty massive displacement of people that has gotten almost no coverage in the American press. 20,000? On Saturday, after 13 days...
All the coverage has been Gazans coming home to find the skeletons of their family in the rubble of their houses.
Yes. Yep. On Saturday, after 13 days of violence in the camp, the Palestinian Liaison Office finally was able to coordinate with its Israeli counterpart to allow funerals for the people whose bodies lay in the morgues. The Israeli authorities imposed strict conditions: no processions, no public gatherings, only ambulances quietly transporting the dead to the cemetery, each accompanied by just 2 family members. Just 2 family members per dead Palestinian. That's why, as I said, the gathering seems pretty small, considering there are numerous bodies being laid to rest there. The delays forced Mahmoud of the emergency services and his team to improvise, burying 4 people in the eastern district of Jenin, which was less affected by the raid, but the burials of 7 others were postponed again. By Monday, Israeli forces finally permitted the burials of the 7 remaining people. But the mourning processions have been reshaped by Israeli military restrictions. No throngs of mourners, no slogans. We've always honored our martyrs together, one mourner said, declining to give his name for fear of reprisals. Now we bury them in silence. So that's what's going on in the West Bank right now. While this temporary ceasefire, which we hope evolves into a permanent ceasefire, that is ostensibly part of why Netanyahu is coming here. My guess is he and Donald Trump are at their podiums right about now. We will have a lot more to say about that on Thursday. But as Netanyahu comes here, this is what's happening in the West Bank, and it's happening largely because of the Gaza ceasefire. So it is really genocide whack-a-mole, right? You cut it off one place, they go to the other. The West Bank is the big prize that Israel wants. They want that more than they want Gaza. It's a much bigger piece of land that gets Israel all the way to the river, to the Jordan River. And so, that is the big prize. And that is being facilitated, as we knew it would, by the United States government under Trump, just as the Greater Israel Project would be promoted under Biden and or Harris had she won. This seems like a continuity, if not an acceleration, of Greater Israel. And obviously, we'll have much more to say about this on Thursday, since the meeting of the minds there between Netanyahu and Trump is probably happening as we speak.
Yeah, Israel just strategically used the ceasefire to move their forces to the West Bank, so that while all of this is still in motion, while there's still a lot of confusion, and while Trump is completely disinterested, really, in anything other than a photo op, they can achieve the objective that they've always had, to take all of this land. And, it's hard not to despair of what would stop them. That's what the man says there. Yeah, who's going to stop them? Who is going to stop them? We, on where we are, all we can do is try to economically cripple them. And long term, I think that will have an impact. I can't imagine tourism ever returning to Israel, and that's a lot of their economy. I think the boycott movement will grow and accelerate and be devastating to their ability to function long term, especially with America withdrawing from the world as it seems to be doing. They're not going to be able to prop them up forever if they go in that direction. But that doesn't help these poor people who, I mean, these are just, it's even after all this time covering it, it's hard to watch these videos.
No,
It's
it's
hard
just
to hear these
it's
stories. It's an
fucking
almost
it's torture.
inconceivable level of evil.
Yes,
Just
it is
evil.
torture. Yep.
And you bring this to a Zionist, and most of them are not, don't think of themselves as monsters. Anything you show them like that, it's propaganda. It's Pallywood. It's Pallywood. They're all making it up for the cameras because they know they cannot accept that this is true and still support this. And there are very few people who are really willing to go against their community, The greatest trick that Zionists ever pulled was convincing Jews that Israel is Jewish,
Right.
that is being a Jew is synonymous with the state of Israel. And as a result, keeping it real, most Jews in America are Zionists. Right? We know from the polling, 80%, most of them. You bring this stuff to them, they can't accept that this is true. They
Right.
can't accept that this is true. And Israeli Hasbara gives them ways to protect themselves from believing any of this. It's Pallywood. They make it all up. No, they have a whole film. That's what they believe. That's what they believe, that there's a whole film complex in Palestine where they shoot all this fake footage to get the world outraged. And anti-Semitism. I mean, just the paranoia. Like all of these very left-wing liberal reporters. Yeah, no, they're all virulently anti-Semitic. They're all it's not that you're supporting a colonizing power on a genocidal rampage. No, it's that all of these liberal reporters are anti-Semitic. That's what it is.
Well, there was a clip, I think Jimmy tweeted it out, that's how I saw it, of Wallace Shawn, the great actor.
Yes.
Who we would love to have on at some point. He was on the Katie Halper show recently. At least that's where this video clip came from. And he said that, in a way, the Israelis are worse than the Nazis morally because the Nazis tried to hide what they did.
Right. Yeah. They were embarrassed of it.
They were embarrassed of it. So they tried to hide it. They tried to make sure no one ever found out about it. Whereas you see a lot of Israelis are very, very proud of this.
Right.
They broadcast it. Right.
Yep.
And part of why that is because they are so psychologically damaged as to think that they are justified in these actions because of the crimes of the Nazis. Right. So, it is absolutely sick. But, it's important to understand that the West Bank project.
What did the woman say in that video? Children grow up to be Arabs.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yep. The West Bank at the time, as the article reports, now it's happening on a smaller scale than in Gaza, which was just all at once. But it's not necessarily a smaller project. In fact, assuming they are committed to see it through to the end, which it seems pretty fucking sure that they are, it's actually a bigger project. And they're going to want to get this done while Trump is in office because he is the most vocal in his support for their annexation of the West Bank. Yeah, we understand. Of course. That's why I didn't vote for Kamala Harris, right? That she was going to continue this policy. But, there were certain roadblocks in there to Greater Israel in the sense that the settlements were declared illegal, right? And so now you have, not only are the settlement, now they want to rename the West Bank Judea and Samaria. Trump wants to rename it, right? And so, it is hopeless. It is hopeless in that sense. Hopeless in the sense that there is no, I don't see any moderating. I don't see any moderating of our Israel policy over these next few years.
You know, man, I think you're being too black-pilled. Haven't you heard? Elon Musk has a bunch of 20-somethings rummaging through the payment system at the Treasury Department. So
That's true.
I don't know why you're being so negative.
Yeah, what was it? 19 to 24 was the age.
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
yeah.
Bunch of kids are going gathering your social security numbers.
Right.
Yep.
While their parents
Yep.
run out and buy them beer.
Yep. Yep. Tulsi said something about something in her hearing. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Cash Patel. Yeah. Claimed that he had never heard of a guy whose podcast he went on 8 times. No, he didn't. He didn't lie about not running the FBI in a biased way. He didn't lie about the fact that he's going to run it as a arm of the Trump White House. No, he didn't lie. He lied about knowing a guy whose podcast he went on 8 times, but he didn't lie about that.
Right.
I don't know why you're being so negative, man. I don't know why you're being so negative. Come in for the big win.
Yeah, right, exactly. All right, let's go to some more super chats here. Keaton, here's the $10 back you lost on that Ryan Grimm cut your own hair video. Here's a scammer, and I was feeling blue. Fight the power. Thank you, Amazing Blumkin. Like your avatar there. Sparky, did you like the alliteration of ludicrously lavish lifestyles? I did, Sparky. Thank you. You're a poet. I could see how USAID may have funded Turning Point USA and the like to stir up distractions like trans, etc. The U.S. is not exempt from their meddling. Earlier super chat may have been about this. Okay, all right. It's okay. I could see that, Sparky. Thank you. Next time you guys are hanging out with President Trump, tell him Israel would have been gone long ago if the U.S. hadn't spent tons of blood and treasure propping them up. Israel ain't all that. Thank you. Brent Yoendo says, wow, look at the big vocab on Big Don. His 5D chess playing must be very, very the best ever. I fear his abilities in 7D Connect 4. Ah, good one. Rare earth is what made Ukraine the breadbasket of Europe. Thank you, Sparky. Very much appreciate that. All right, folks, we have one more segment on the day before we retire. We are going to be doing an interview tomorrow at noon, right? That's our interview.
Yes.
Tomorrow, that's a pre-recorded.
Mark Goodman.
Goodwin,
sorry. And he can explain a little bit more about de-dollarization. This is kind of his area of expertise, the move towards digital currency, and what USAID really does.
Exactly. So we're doing that at noon as one of our pre-recorded interviews, which allows us the scheduling flexibility to get as many as we can. So that is not a live interview. That'll premiere later in the week, but it's live to all of the cool kids who sign up at patreon.com/DoDissidents, DoDissidents.substack.com, or DoDissidents.locals.com. So you could join our locals for as little as $5 a month, and that gets you perks such as your name up in lights here on the show scroll. You also get call-in access to our post-show Q&As, which take place every Sunday night exclusively on Rumble. You also get 2 bonus live streams per month just for members. One is formatted similar to this, where we do about an hour's worth of content and segments, and then we take about an hour's worth of your calls. So those are interactive. We also do the movie club as the second supporter stream per month. You also get live stream access to all of our full-length pre-recorded interviews. So tomorrow, Mark Goodwin's going to be joining us. We will send out the exact time early in the morning with a link to join. So you get live stream access to all those interviews that we pre-record. So you'll see them live in real time. You can ask questions.
Eastern time, folks.
Yes, Eastern time. And so that is a fun perk of joining as well, with a live chat and everything. So that's DoDissidents.locals.com. If you're watching over on Rumble right now, which about 1,300 of you are, you could smash that join button. It's a bright red button right underneath the video player that takes you right to our locals, where you could sign up for as little as $5 a month, or you can even save a little money and join for $50 annually if that's your thing. And you get access to all those perks, plus the good karma of supporting independent media. So please and thank you very much for your support. Our members are the backbone of the show. We could not do it without you folks. Okay.
Hey man, I totally forgot to load my exhibits.
Oh, for the for the Canada-Mexico thing. Yeah, I should have warned you before we did that. That's all right.
So, and I remembered to take down my videos too.
Oh, but you just didn't follow through and load the others in. All right, well, I'll take
your Israel segment was so entrancing.
It was so arresting. Yes.
It's so arresting, yes. All right, I'm loading them in now.
All right, I'll do some Rumble rants and super chats while we are here. Where are we at here? Sparky, anytime someone says Israel's our only friend in the Middle East, I can't help but think before Israel, we had no enemies in the Middle East. U.S. missionary John Sheehan. Thank you very much for that, Sparky. Eric Rousseau, we must regime change over there before we regime change here. Thank you, Eric Rousseau. Appreciate that. All right, cool. Victor Shakapopoulos, I strongly recommend the 1972 Costa Gavras film State of Siege, a real story about the 1970 kidnapping of a USAID employee by the Uruguayan leftist urban guerrilla. Watching Trump do what seems to be the escape forward trick to save the empire reminds me of the quote from The Leopard, "If we want things to stay as they are, things will have to change." Thank you. Interesting. Appreciate that. Noah Goop, did you guys see those Betar clowns put a pager in Norm Finkelstein's pocket? Starting to think Betar is just Mr. Benelli's alter ego. Yes, that's good. Thank you, Noah Goop. Yes, we did see that.
You're such a fantastic moron.
Yes, such a fantastic moron. Great sources on this USAID segment. Thank you, John. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Hillary Hinton, Lennon McCartney, Jagger Richards, Strummer Jones, Dobular Weiss, or is it Weiss Dobular? Keep it up, you magnificent bastards. Thank you. Glad you could make the show, Hillary Hinton. Back from your appointment. May Jest, can we have Arnaud on the show? He goes on podcasts.
Yeah, I've wanted to have him on.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's good.
My girlfriend Tulsi just made it out of committee. I hope she puts cases on all you hating sons of bitches. Russell will be played basketball in Rikers. There you go.
Did she make it out of committee?
She just did. She cleared, yeah.
All right.
Stoop sign. Once BRICS is able to really build, it'll be much harder for the U.S. and NATO to huff and puff and blow their house down. Thank you, Stoop sign. Appreciate that. Floop 1000. Would you guys please have Aaron Good from American Exception and the Devil's Chessboard on to talk about the deep state? I think this matters a lot as the world order changes.
That is another book, Devil's Chessboard, that is sitting on my nightstand. It is so hard to find time to read anything else.
Right.
Things we need to read to do the show.
And now you're really in catch-up mode.
Yeah.
All right. We got one more song for you all today.
One more. All right. Tariffs, baby. All right. So Donald J. Trump was asked about tariffs. I think this was the same one where he was talking about USAID.
What does Canada and Mexico need to do for you to lift the tariffs? What are specifically you want? That have to balance out their trade, number one. That we've got to stop people from pouring into our country, and we've stopped it. They haven't stopped it. We've stopped it. They have to stop people from pouring in, and we have to stop fentanyl, and that includes China. Fentanyl has killed this year at least 200,000 people. It's pouring in from China through Mexico and Canada, and they've got to stop it. And if they don't stop it, the tariffs are going to get worse, a lot worse.
Mr. President, I'm going to the border.
All right. So if you feel that Trump's policies are just overblown or way over the top, have no fear. Have no fear. Chuck Schumer is here.
Just take Super Bowl Sunday, okay? It's going to affect beer, okay? Most of it, Corona here, comes from Mexico.
We understand
it's
that,
going to
yes.
affect your guac. Because what is guacamole made of? Avocados, both from Mexico.
It's like on Channel 13. You should be on the weekends for the kids.
I don't understand how they lost to Trump.
How do they keep
I don't
losing,
get
man?
it.
You don't.
How do they keep losing to these guys?
You don't need props for beer and avocado. You don't need that.
You could just say
Just
beer
say
and
beer and avocado.
No,
Sometimes
no,
less is more, Chuck. Less is more.
And this is what you saw in the DNC chair race. You're just amazed that they think these things are a good idea.
Yeah.
Like somebody must have said, "Oh yeah, no, I think you should do that."
Wait, don't go on yet. Hold on. Hey, Larry, run out and buy Chuck a tall boy of Corona and an avocado.
amazing that these people are longtime professional
Yeah.
politicians who think, yeah, no, that's going to play. Why don't you get the special Dukakis Army helmet while you're at it?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So Trump here, after apparently resolving this with Mexico for the time being, truthed out. I just spoke with President Claudia Sheinbaum, a Jew of Mexico. It was a very, he didn't say that. It was
They're
a
tough
very
negotiating
friendly,
partners, I tell you.
they're very
I liked
tough.
it back
They're
when
very tough.
Mexicans voted for Mexicans. Now they start voting for Jews. It's tougher to negotiate with them.
You know, she's tight. She's tight.
Yeah.
Those people are tight. It was a very friendly conversation wherein she agreed to immediately supply 10,000 Mexican soldiers on the border separating Mexico and the United States. These soldiers will be specifically designated to stop the flow of fentanyl and illegal migrants into our country. We further agreed to immediately pause the anticipated tariffs for a 1-month period, during which we will have negotiations headed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent, also George Soros alumni, in case anybody's asking, and Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, and high-level representatives of Mexico. I look forward to participating in those negotiations with President Sheinbaum, a Jew, as we attempt to achieve a deal between our two countries. So, of course, MAGA world went wild with this concession from Sheinbaum. Canada
I'm
surrenders.
proud
Trump
to be
wins.
an American, at least drunk Larry free.
Was that a new one?
No, that's the one we did from the inauguration. Remember, that was our correspondent.
Oh,
I put him on.
right.
I immortalized
right.
Drunk Larry for the soundboard. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Benny Johnson. After a phone call with President Trump, Canada PM Justin Trudeau announced the following $1.3 billion border plan. Nearly 10,000 troops dispatched to safeguard the border under Trump's pressure. Trudeau concedes 30-day delay on U.S. tariffs. U.S.-Mexico joint force to combat crime and the flow of fentanyl. $200 million towards new intelligence directive on organized crime. So everybody surrendered, right? Johnny MAGA. Yeah. Oh, they all caved. I'm going to leave work today and buy regular price Corona limes and avocados while 10,000 Mexican troops block criminals and drugs from entering the United States. Very exciting. Except, Mexico sent 15,000 troops to the border in 2019. Oh, really? This wasn't a big cave-in? Mexico also sent 10,000 troops to the border in 2021. Oh. It almost sounds like they treat Donald like a petulant child, and they understand that the way to play Donald is to go, oh, little baby wants a rattle? Here's a rattle. Ooh, shake, rattle, right? Proof Trump caved. To all the MAGA who's saying Trump got what he wanted because Mexico is sending 10,000 troops to the border, Biden achieved the same deployment in 2021 without any threats. And I might add, with half a brain.
How you like that?
How you like that? How you like them apples?
How you like them apples?
How you like them avocados? Huh?
And that was back when the Mexican was president.
So here you go.
I was back when Mexico. I was back in the old days when Mexico was run by Mexicans. Like
it was run by Mexicans, not the Jews. You know how hard it is to deal with those people. So here's the AP. Here's the AP. April 12th, 2021. So yes, you can look it up yourself. They did send 10,000 troops to the border in 2021, and they sent 15,000, even more, in 2019. So now here's Trump speaking specifically while the tariffs on Canada were still pending about what he might need to lift those tariffs or not impose them.
again, is there anything he can give you at 3 p.m. when you talk again to also
I don't
secure
know.
a pause,
I don't know.
like you said with Mexico?
I don't know. We have big deficits with Canada, like we do with all countries. I mean, I look at some of the deals made, I say, who the hell made these deals are so bad? But with Canada, I have a talk with him, and you maybe know or maybe not. We're going to meet again or talk again at 3 o'clock, right after my next meeting. And we'll see what happens. I can't tell you what's going to happen.
You mentioned that he could agree to change your mind on the tariffs?
Well, we can always, but look, what I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state. We give them protection, military protection. We don't need them to build our cars. I'd rather see Detroit or South Carolina or any one of our Tennessee, any one of our states build the cars. They could do it very easily. We don't need them for the cars. We don't need them for lumber. We don't need them for anything. We don't need them for energy. We have more energy than they do. We don't need them for energy. So I say, why are we doing this? Why are we willing to lose between $100 billion and $200 billion a year? We don't need them. As a state, it's different. As a state, it's much different. And there are no tariffs. So I'd love to see that, but some people say that would be a long shot. If people wanted to play the game right, it would be 100% certain that they'd become a state. But a lot of people don't like to play the game because they don't have a threshold of pain. And there would be some pain, but not a lot. The pain would be really there. So we're going to meet again by phone at 3 o'clock, and we'll let you know what it is.
I think one state, you're selling yourself kind of short. Canada's a bigger
that's
country
a pretty big
and land
territory.
area.
Yeah, you get 5, 6
and then the
states
United
out of
States,
it.
you get at least 10 states out of that. It's
Sure.
bigger than the entire U.S. Yeah, it's larger. So
Yeah,
why not 10 states?
You know, when the South Park movie came out, everyone thought the idea of the United States going to war with Canada was like a hilarious satire. But we're living in a very satiric world today.
Also, if we don't need them, why do we want them to become a state?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's just a deranged absurdity. Even the right-wing candidate who's likely to become the next PM is not taking very kindly to that kind of rhetoric.
I mean, there is a poll out there that does show 65% of Canadians are eager to go into medical bankruptcy. So there might be momentum
that is
behind
true. I thought it
statehood.
was 67. It's not.
Yeah,
65.
it's
Oh,
down a little bit.
67.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
down a little bit. I mean, they heard about how
Well,
much
as the bird
fun
flu
Americans
scare.
have going bankrupt
Yeah, right.
from
Yeah, exactly.
cancer, and they
Yes.
said, "Why can't we have that kind of fun, eh?"
Right.
So, Canadians started clearing shelves of American goods. Who says they don't have any nationalism up there? So Trudeau, though, much like Scheinbaum, without the benefit of being Jewish,
Yes, that's
resolved this with Donald Trump. I just had a good call with President Trump. Canada is implementing our $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the border with new choppers, technology, and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl. Nearly 10,000 frontline personnel are and will be working on protecting the border. In addition, Canada is making new commitments to appoint a fentanyl czar. We will list cartels as terrorists, ensure 24/7 eyes on the border, launch a Canada-U.S. joint strike force to combat organized crime, fentanyl, and money laundering. I have also signed a new intelligence directive on organized crime and fentanyl, and we will be backing it with $200 million. Proposed tariffs will be paused for at least 30 days while we work together. All right, so this is a big win, right? Oh, apparently not. Apparently not. So the Canadian border deal agreed to a $1.3 million border deal that was prepared, agreed to, and announced when Biden was in the White House. The U.S. now pays them $100 million in fresh money. And 3, only new thing Canada has to do is appoint a fentanyl czar.
Oh, well, there you go. Hunter Biden gets a job. Boom.
There you go. Perfect.
He needs a job. Go be the Canadian fentanyl czar.
And once again, Canada already agreed to $1.3 billion in December. Trump threw the markets into chaos and torched a centuries-old Canada-U.S. relationship over $200 million, just 0.02% of our 1 trillion plus annual trade. Now we'll stop 42 pounds of fentanyl a year instead of 40. Art of the deal. And here, in case anybody doubts it, once again, you have reported back December 17th, 2024, from the poster, really tired of all the lying and misinformation. All of this, except possibly the border czar, was agreed on under the Biden administration. See the dates. And very little fentanyl was seized last year at the Canadian border. Approximately 1% of all drugs entering the U.S. This was all for show. Okay. Now, you might say, well, these are a bunch of libs with their lying actual headlines with dates. Well, you know who are not libs? The folks at the Wall Street Journal. And they said, although not in as precise terms, this is all just a bunch of bullshit, really. President Trump never admits a mistake, but he often changes his mind. That's the best way to read his decision Monday to pause his 25% tariffs against Mexico and Canada after minor concessions from each country. Mr. Trump claimed victory, as he always does. He pointed to Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum's decision to deploy 10,000 National Guard troops to the U.S. border to fight drug trafficking, especially in fentanyl. Ms. Sheinbaum, in her morning statement, said, "We had a good conversation with President Trump with great respect for our relationship and sovereignty." She added that Mr. Trump committed to working to prevent the trafficking of high-powered weapons to Mexico. The two sides will continue negotiating on security and trade, and Mr. Trump agreed to pause the tariffs for a month. There's much less to this tariff truce than meets the eye. Mr. Trump won an announcement of help at the border, though what the Mexican troops will actually do to fight the cartels trafficking drugs isn't clear. Drug enforcement is a hardy perennial in U.S.-Mexican relations, and Mexico has promised help before, notably during the presidencies of Felipe Calderon and Enrique Peña Nieto. As for immigration, Ms. Sheinbaum has already essentially agreed to cooperate on restoring the Remain in Mexico policy for migrants who reach the Mexico-U.S. border. Illegal border crossings have also been falling fast as Mr. Trump has sent a signal that illegal migrants won't be allowed to stay in the U.S. Later Monday, Mr. Trump paused his tariffs against Canada as well after a phone call with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Canada is also deploying more law enforcement to the U.S. border and will appoint a fentanyl czar, among other enforcement promises. If the North American leaders need to cheer about a minor deal so they all claim victory, that's better for everyone. The need is especially important for Mr. Trump, given how much he has boasted that his tariffs are a foolproof diplomatic weapon against friend or foe. Mr. Trump can't afford to look like the guy who lost. Ms. Sheinbaum, in particular, seems to recognize this, and so far she's playing her trump cards with skill. None of this means the tariffs are some genius power play, as the Trump media chorus is boasting. The 25% border tax could return in a month if Mr. Trump is in the wrong mood or if he doesn't like something the foreign leaders have said or done. It also isn't clear what Mr. Trump really wants his tariffs to achieve. Are they about reducing the flow of fentanyl, or is his real goal to rewrite the North American trade deal he signed in his first term? If it's the latter, there's more political volatility ahead. And all of that aside, hey, China retaliates with traditional tariffs of up to 15% on select U.S. imports starting February 10th. China's finance ministry said Tuesday it will impose additional tariffs of 15% on coal and liquefied natural gas imports from the U.S. China will also levy 10% higher duties on American crude oil, farm equipment, and certain cars and trucks, as well as enacting export controls on certain products related to critical minerals. You might have a feeling of deja vu. This went on quite a lot in Trump's first term, that he would beat his chest and then get very minor kind of symbolic gestures and claim an enormous victory. Most of what's here is either symbolic or it was previously agreed to. You will get a lot of this, I will predict, in Trump's second term as well. China, those folks are no pushovers. And it seems, as again, you saw very often in the first term, a lot of these world leaders, most of them, I would wager perhaps all of them, are a lot smarter than Donald Trump is. They get who they're dealing with, they get what they're dealing with, and they are secure enough in their egos to let him feel like he won by saying, oh, yeah, borders are, yeah, fentanyls are, yeah, we'll point one right away. Yeah, see, he gave in right away. Come on, man. What did you get? You got nothing. You got nothing.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's also, I mean, look, Trump wants to, dominate the media cycle and rack up wins. And he was successful in doing that this time. And it is a bit of a double dip, as I'll say. I think he this is what they call the double dip, because just to steelman this a bit. Okay, so the 1.3 billion federal border security that Canada said yes to, that was December 17th, 2024, which that's technically under Biden. Now, you could make that argument, as I'm sure they did at the time, that, see, they know new sheriff's coming to town because Trump won the election, so this is what they are committing to doing. So they got a victory lap out of that.
Sure.
And then they took a victory lap on it again by acting like they agreed to it in response to the tariffs. Well, no, it's very possible. In fact, I would argue it's likely that they agreed to do that in response to Trump's victory. But what was the extra juice you got out of the tariffs? Not much. But they're able to claim it because they're basically claiming the same victory twice. Right.
And with Mexico more clearly, that was done entirely 2021.
Well, you're talking years ago.
Within Biden's administration, right? They sent 10,000 troops to the border without any tariff threats. Like, do we honestly believe that Trump could not have negotiated with Mexico to get the troops to the border? The basic framing that because Trump threatened tariffs, these actions were taken is just not true. That simply isn't true. Now, yes, I would agree with you. December, they knew Trump was coming in. Sure, they didn't do this in response to these tariff threats as it's being framed.
Right. And obviously, when you're dealing with China, they have a much stronger hand, right, to play. Where you're probably not going to get even anything too minor out of them, at least in the short term. We will see. But they are playing a pretty strong hand. I mean, if it comes to a question of who blinks first, well, who has to blink first? I mean, we can't make trade with China impossible. We simply can't. Like, look at how the stock market responded to just these tariffs, right? Plunged, and then it went back up when they were eased. But yeah, man, I mean, that is a card that.
Well, not only that. I mean, if you look at how tariffs usually play out in a developed economy, which we're not like a small economy trying to build these small native industries. You impose a tariff on steel, for example.
Right.
Okay, so maybe you create some jobs in steel. How many jobs do you lose in industries that are relying on a certain price point for steel that they can no longer get? How many auto factories now close down? How many parts that are made from steel are no longer affordable, so entire industries are shut down? We have had this experience in the past. They tried to do this with washing machines, where they imposed tariffs on washing machines. It did not help the washing machine industry. And what very often happens with these kinds of tariffs is the countries that they're imposed on will find workarounds. They'll import them to a third-party country and then send them in
and send
from
them in.
there.
Right.
So it's not as simple. It sounds great, and that's very typical Trump. A lot of chest beating, very simplistic explanations for how the world works, a lot of victory laps for, as we see here, really illusory and meaningless symbolic victories. In the end, working people are looking at these policies, and yeah, it makes sense if you just hear it on the surface. But in reality, for an economy like ours, yeah, maybe in 10 years, if you completely shut out imports, you would develop native industries like that. That would take a very long time. And it might not work. Even if it did, it's not going to work anytime soon. It's more likely to make things worse short term than to make things better for working people. That's what the evidence shows. That's what the history of tariff attempts like this would suggest.
Well, I'm just glad we got it settled in time for Super Bowl Sunday so we could have our Coronas and
have
our
our
avocados.
avocados.
Yes,
Yep.
that's right. Sparky, thanks for the $5. Rare earth is what made Ukraine the breadbasket of Europe. Thank you, Sparky. Sparky again. Thanks. Sparky's making it rain today. Let's have a cowbell for Sparky. Sparky's dropped a lot of $10 bills on us here. Thank you, Sparky. Anytime someone says Israel's our only friend in the Middle East, I can't help but think before Israel, we had no enemies in the Middle East. U.S. missionary John Sheehan. Glad to see you use Brian Berledick as a source. Berledick, accent on first syllable. Yeah, that's how I said it. He's the guy with the new Atlas channel. Follow him. He's got the scoop on regime change ops. Yeah, well, we're going to try to maybe bring him on one of these days. We'll see if we could do that. Philosophical thirst trap, thank you. It's impossible to describe how good it feels seeing all these NAFO accounts and random propaganda outlets lose funding. Lyndon McLeod, thanks for the 100 Canadian dollars. Let's have a cowbell for Lyndon McLeod. Friggin' tariffs.
Is that in honor of the end of the tariffs there?
Well, yeah, it is. Yeah, actually, yes. Yes, very, very smart. Just, he says, friggin' tariffs. Wait, what? They're off? Shit. There you go. Well, thank you, Lyndon. Appreciate that. Appreciate that very much. Sparky, FDA is responsible for the fentanyl scourge for allowing it outside of clinical settings. Cartels are CIA proxies. China sells ingredients which are used for many different items other than fentanyl. Sparky, again. Fentanyl was a convenient out since the tariffs might not hold up in court since they may clash with existing agreements. Sparky says, free Canada from the Castro regime. Thank you, Sparky. The Amazing Blumpkin, nice Full Metal Jacket reference, Russell. Must be a Dapper Dan man. There you got it. Let's see. Really good analysis of USAID and tariffs, guys. Thank you, Mike T. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
John Bustamante, Kim Iverson and Sabby's coverage of Trump and Colombian president demands and tariffs was very poor, parroting mainstream media talking points. I have not seen any of that. I haven't seen anybody, of our friends cover their
I haven't seen
stuff.
any of that.
I was up all night taking care of a baby. That's why I'm bleary-eyed, exhausted. I haven't seen anybody else get into this.
Yeah, look, man, I almost think the USAID thing, I might do a shit post to this effect, but the USAID thing was already too complicated to add another layer. I've said this many times. I'm gonna show you all, maybe in a shit post, maybe someplace else. Look at the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time. They're pretty much all very simplistic good versus evil stories. People's brains are programmed that way. Now, whether that's because of the stories they absorb or we create stories like that because that's what we like. That's how, Joseph Campbell, our minds are designed that way to see the world that way or to respond to those kinds of plots and structures and conceptualizations. Whatever it is, people like that. And when people are in the podcast space, well, they find that out pretty quickly because you get clicks from being for or against, right? From having that. The idea that everyone's bad, some people like that take. Most people don't. Most people want to hear, yeah, Elon's coming and he's auditing the treasury. They don't want to hear, yeah, the people who were there are scumbags and the people coming in now are scumbags. That's a nuance that doesn't make big box office. It doesn't make the big top 10 at the box office. That's the art house film.
Right. Exactly. That's Reservoir Dogs.
That's Reservoir Dogs. We're doing Reservoir Dogs.
Right, we're doing Reservoir Dogs, not Kill Bill. Originally, fentanyl was only administered in a clinical setting because the risk of accidental overdose was ultra high. It remained that way for years. FDA changed that in order to thin the herd. You said duties. Thank you, American Blumpkin. Sparky says that still didn't sound right. Maybe it's accent on second syllable, burletic. I think it's burletic. My mistake. I always thought it was burletic. Man, maybe I'm wrong. Because isn't there like a record producer named Burletic too? Well, DD, please invite Katy Perry on the show to discuss Russell Brand's perceived arsehole diameter. Thanks in advance. Oh, yeah, that would be a exclusive. We'll do that as an exclusive.
That would definitely be an exclusive.
El Corey, boycott Netflix, HB, Chevron, Max, Texaco, Volvo, Barclays, McDonald's, Burger King, Disney, Domino's, Papa John's, Pizza Hut, Wix, and more. CBDSmovement.net. Yeah, man, all the fake pizza, all the delicious fake pizzas in the pocket of Israel. That's sad because I like fake pizza. I always had a that was one guilty pleasure.
See, you're not a real New Yorker, man.
I say
I don't touch that shit. I'll only touch it if I'm in a faraway place.
I mean, pizza and beer, same attitude. I'm a beer lover. I'm not a beer snob.
When I go up, by the way, pizza. I'm going for a month in the spring. I'm going up to Buffalo to try it on for size. I did it for a week a couple years ago. I liked it. We'll see how I feel for a month. So I might move up there, at least for part of the year. I understand there's a Buffalo style of pizza. Now, I had pizza just at a random pizza shop, and it was fucking awful. But apparently they do have like a version of pizza, a Buffalo version of pizza specifically. So I'll try it when I'm up there. That's really going to be the make or break.
Yeah.
Like, can I get pizza up there that I find acceptable? I'm
You
not living on no Domino's, man.
I mean, no, I find it like up here, I find pizza to be not as automatic. Like the closer you are to the city, the more automatic pizza is. Where like you can wander into a random pizzeria and trust it's going to be a baseline quality. Right. Whereas, in the city, you obviously make that assumption. Even where I lived in Newburgh in the metro area, it's only 60 miles north. You can make that broad baseline assumption about the quality of pizza. Up here, you can't. Up here, there's terrible. Like
you can't just walk into a place.
You can't just walk into a place and trust it's not going to be absolute shit. Right. So you have to know where to look. But you can find it. It's not like it doesn't exist up here. You just have to find it up here.
There was an Italian restaurant there that I went to, like a restaurant. Right. It was as good as anything in Little Italy.
Oh, yeah.
So there's that leads me to believe if you know where to go, you could probably find it.
You could find it. Exactly. Ken Texican, come in for the big win. Good one, Rush. Straight out Full Metal Jacket. There you go. Bo Connor, hey guys, I heard you read a comment mentioning the NALC contract fight. I thought you would let you know the contract was voted down by the members 71-29. Please cover if possible. Thank you. I will look into that NALC contract fight. Thank you, Bo Connor. Appreciate that. Let's see, we got that one already. Trump claims the tariffs are because of fentanyl's demonstrable BS. Everyone knows the CIA ran drugs in the U.S. out of Afghanistan. They still stopped. I have Twin Towers to sell them. Thank you, Roberto. Appreciate that. Eric Husso, these Democrats make me believe that the Green Party throat singing was DNC infiltration. That's good. That's a good one. I like that. Eric Husso says these elites don't want fentanyl in their cocaine. That's right. Noah Goop. And Wokeness said the U.S. should cut Canada off from toilet paper, which is made out of paper, which is made out of trees, which grow out of the ground in Canada. That's true.
I'm sorry, man. If this ain't some idiocracy shit, I don't know what is, man.
Yeah, no, it's fucking stupidity. Totally. Let's see. China Shill, frozen pizza rocks Keaton, the real proletariat meal. Thank you, China Shill, for backing me up on that. All right, folks, that's our show. We appreciate you very much. Sparky jumped over to Rumble for this last Rumble rant. USAID story is still good just to see the cockroaches scatter. Thank you, Sparky. Appreciate that. All righty. Thank you guys very much for today. Appreciate you all very much for being here. We will see you tomorrow. We're going to send an email out with the exact time. If you are a member, we are interviewing Mark Goodwin tomorrow, so we will send you guys that email in the morning. If you're a member, you can watch live. Go to dudissidents.locals.com to sign up to become a member. Everybody else, we'll see you Thursday, noontime Eastern. Thursday, noon. That is when we are next on the air for the general public. Thank you guys very, very much for being here today. Thanks to our YouTubers and our Rumblers. Smash that like button on the way out. Oh, but one more for the road here. We got 928 likes on YouTube. And, of course, thank you to our Rumblers. Smash that follow button on Rumble. Smash that subscribe button over on YouTube, and have yourselves a great, great evening. We will see you patrons tomorrow for the interview if you want to sit in. Everybody else, we'll see you Thursday, noon Eastern. Until then, be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.